Good afternoon, everybody. It is Friday, November 18th, 2022. This is a regular meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. We're live in City Hall, Commissioners' Room on the second floor. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 2:01 p.m. Thank you very much. With that, will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to start off with roll call. Commissioner Sharp will note is not here. She called me earlier. She's under the weather. Hope she feels better soon. With that, we'll go to Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
Commissioner Edward Shanowski.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett. I have to look at you.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Bunky Markert. Here. And Mayor Stan Mills. We have a quorum and are able to formally conduct business today. Thank you. With that, I'd also like to identify staff. It takes staff to help take this meeting and make it happen. Brant is over there in Ann's seat. We've also got Matt Janis from Building and Licensing, Howard Rothstein from Building and Licensing, Interim City Manager Evan Miller, City Solicitor Glenn Mandalis, Public Works Director Kevin Williams, Chief of Police Keith Banks, Bert Dukes, our financial wizard there, and I think, and Alex also from our attorney's office. Thank you all for being here today. With that, I'd like to do my typical reminders and thank yous. Thank you for everybody that's here in person. As you know, as we approach different agenda topics, there's often an opportunity for you to give us feedback, which we welcome, and if so, then I will call on you when the time is appropriate. Also like to thank everybody that's watching virtually, and thank you for doing that. And a reminder that our support documents that support our agenda topics, when they're ready in advance of a meeting, are embedded into the agenda. Go to the city's website, specifically go to the city's portal. In the top right corner of the portal, you'll find a calendar. Click on the calendar and search for the correct meeting date. Click on that and play around with that, and you'll be able to see most of the documents that we are able to see if they're posted online prior to the meeting. With that, we want to acknowledge correspondence. We have one piece of correspondence from Carolyn Diefendorfer that is embedded in the agenda for you to look at. The subject matter is construction work hours, so we'll reference that later at appropriate time during the meeting. With that, there are no minutes to approve at this session. The next item is City Manager's Report. Evan Miller, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, members of the public. We do have street aid expenditures today, one in the amount of $270 for Apple Electric, one again for Apple Electric in the amount of $10,028, and one to Delmarva Power in the amount of $9,411.42.
So could I have a motion to approve two sets of invoices totaling $19,709.42 for the payment of street aid expenditures?
Can I just ask a question? Yeah. On the agenda, it's posted one for October as well. Is that included or not?
That's correct.
It is.
Yeah, there's two here.
2 pages, yeah.
Right. So I'm looking for a motion to approve street aid expenditures in the total amount of $19,709.42.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ed Shrnowski and a second by Commissioner Jay Legree to accept authorized payment of the street aid expenditures in the amount noted. All those, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And the street aid expenditures are approved unanimously. Thank you very much. With that, our next item of business is to allow the city manager to finish his report.
Thank you, Mayor. The Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association hosted its annual employee appreciation event this morning, providing city employees with coffee, donuts, and a Rise Up gift card. So on behalf of the city's 108 employees, we are grateful to the Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association for their thoughtfulness. Thank you very much. Tree lighting and holiday sing-along, the city's Christmas tree, if you haven't seen, was delivered to the bandstand this week. We want to thank the tree donors, Dean and Debbie Smith, who live in the greater Rehoboth area. We also want to express our appreciation for the collaboration and donation of time and services provided this year and year after year by those companies who help remove, transport, and install the tree at the bandstand. We want to thank Harry Caswell, Inc., George Plummer and Son, John L. Briggs Co., and Delmarva Power. The city will host its annual tree lighting and holiday sing-along event at 6:30 p.m. Friday, November 25th at the bandstand. We hope you can come join us and welcome in the holiday season. The CDP, Comprehensive Development Plan, has been certified. We received word from the governor that, again, per the recommendation of the Office of State Planning Coordination, the CDP was certified. We received that notification this week. That certification is dated June 28th, 2022. An update on the paving on Norfolk and Scarborough Avenue. All paving on both Norfolk and Scarborough have been completed this week, as well as utility adjustments. Landscaping and other related restoration work will continue into next week. Striping and completion of ADA ramps are also scheduled for next week. Finally, the police department is assisting the Rehoboth Elementary School with its annual holiday food drive by serving as a donation site for non-perishable food items. Food items will be accepted at the police department through December 1st, and Sussex County Council will use the collected non-perishable food items to help support families in need through the cold winter months. And that's all I have to report, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions by the commissioners of the city manager? If not, thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the city solicitor's report. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor. With a lengthy agenda, I have nothing to report today unless commissioners have questions for me.
Anything? Nope, very good. Short and sweet, thank you. With that, we'll go to departmental reports. We have embedded in the agenda Building and Licensing Department report for October, and then the Police Department report. Does Building and Licensing want to have any oral addendum to their report? Nope, that's fine. And Police Department, do you want to have any oral addendum to your report? Yes, sir.
And Mayor, real quick while the chief's standing at the podium, I just wanted to mention, you'll notice I have hard copies for the commissioners. There's also hard copies provided out in the lobby. A version will be provided on the agenda for today. We received it a bit late, but included in this month's report for the Building and Licensing Department is a Code Enforcement Department monthly report. So just some additional information that you'll start to receive monthly from Building and Licensing.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
That looks very good. Chief, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, General Public. The Rehoboth Beach Police Department is saddened to share the news of the loss of communication specialist Daniel J. Mitchell, who passed away peacefully at his home on Saturday, November 12th, surrounded by his family and friends. Danny served the Rehoboth Beach Police Department Communications Center for the past 17 years. He also served as president of the Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company, of which he is a life member. We will be forever grateful for his dedication to this agency and to the citizens of Rehoboth Beach. His services will take place this Saturday, tomorrow, November 19th, at the Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Department on Rehoboth Avenue, so right next door, beginning at 10 a.m. The service may impact traffic, but we do not anticipate any road closures. Burial with firemen's honors will follow the funeral services at Epworth Methodist Cemetery on Henlopen Avenue. Just to kind of give the route so everybody's familiar with that, I said we will have some traffic delays perhaps. We will leave the fire company and head east and go up towards the bandstand, go around the bandstand and back up past the fire department, continuing west to the circle. After we get to the circle, we'll make a right and go down Columbia Avenue and take that down to Surf Avenue. And then we'll make a left, followed up on Henlopen Avenue all the way up to the cemetery. The police department, the Rehoboth Beach Fire Police, and other agencies will assist traffic at key intersections. So again, traffic may be impacted, but no road closures are expected. So around noontime, the viewings begins at 10, the funeral service at 11. So sometime around noon, they'll come out and take his body and load on the fire truck, and they'll blow the fire whistle. So there'll be a full cycle of the fire whistle that goes off at that time. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Any questions? Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. With that, I want to go to the board and commission reports. Embedded in the agenda, again, to save time, is a report from the Board of Adjustment articulating what happened at their last meeting. Same thing for the Planning Commission report that, again, is embedded in the agenda. With that, we'll go to committee reports. That nobody offered any oral reports or written reports other than the Stormwater Utility Task Force presentation. I believe Commissioner Jay Legree, who's the chair of that, you indicated this is informational only, and there's not going to be a talk about it today.
No, I'll answer any questions that anybody might have. I just want to thank the mayor for putting those in full size so everybody can read the spreadsheets and get a tally of the expenses and expected capital improvement. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So you've got a report coming up after the first of the year anyhow, but this is just to give us a little preview and maybe whet our appetite on it.
And I'll probably report at the regular meeting in December if you would like.
All right. Thank you very much. With that, we're going to go to the liaison reports. For the Chamber of Commerce, I'm the liaison, but we have Carol Everhart here. I'm going to turn it over to her.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'll start with the occupancy. I have to apologize, I did not have time scheduled to do just the downtown report, but I do have the overall. So I'm going to look at the Wednesday in the 19971 zip code, comparing 21 to 22 on Wednesday nights. In 2021, 97,147 occupied rooms. In 2022, almost a tie, 98,273. For Saturday night, 2021, 122,045. And for 2022, 129,923. I also want to let the Mayor and Commissioners know that the Chamber has become a part of the Seasonal Employment Alliance, and that alliance is really working to make sure that those who need non-agricultural seasonal employees, that there is a pathway for that to happen for both short-term and long-term. The effort was grassroots. We've been working on it for about 6 months. And it appears as though it has some real possibilities of happening. Also, I wanted you to know that there are 3 vacated board seats on the Chamber board. We've had, right now we have 8 applicants. The interviews are scheduled for December 6th. And as we always do, we try to make sure that all 6 categories of businesses, accommodations, attractions, restaurants, real estate, retail, and service, that there's a voice there, and that there's a voice from each geographic territory also. John Sisson, who is the CEO of Delaware Transit, was at our general membership meeting, and he reported that on Saturday of Sea-Witch, they transported 4,000. These were free rides, but they asked for a donation of food, and he stated that they got a half a ton of food, so that was a big success for DART and for the transit. And my last comment is Sea-Witch. I just wanted to thank the City of Rehoboth for the cooperation and the permitting and everything that was done to assist us, whether it was permitting or it was police or it was fire department, right down to the trash collection. Everybody pitched in, and it took a team to make it a success. My information so far is that on Saturday, based on the grid, they take the picture from aerial, that we had about 100,000 people on Saturday, 40,000 on Friday, which I questioned because the weather wasn't that good, but that was the amount that came back, and another 60,000 on Sunday. So kudos to everybody that helped. The full financial and information about that will be in the Cape Gazette on December 9th. Okay, that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions of Carol? Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. With that, we'll go to the next liaison report. Liaison for the Rehoboth Beach Historical Society is Commissioner Jay Legree. Go ahead.
Tonight is our annual membership night, and also beginning of the unveiling of the winners of the photo contest. So it'll be great fun at the museum tonight, and encourage everybody to go and enjoy the presentation. Thank you, Mayor.
That's
Thank
if
you.
the mayor lets us get out of here in time.
I promise to get you, I can't guarantee there'll be any food left, but you'll be there by the end of it. With that, we're going to go to the next liaison report for Main Street. Commissioner Ed Chernowski.
We've got Dan Slagle, Executive Director, Greer Manival, and Cindy Lovett here from Main Street.
Pass these down there. Take one for yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cindy Lovett. I'm co-chair of the Design Committee for Main Street. We have a lot going on. And first, I want to thank so much the City of Rehoboth for your continued support for Rehoboth and Bloom. All planters are now transitioned to our winter pansies and kale. That was a project. And we thank the Streets Department for picking up the debris bags that everybody puts their flowers in. That's great. Thank you. You may have noticed the big dirt patch in front of the museum. Step one of the new garden, Canalside Garden, has been done. Yesterday, RSC Landscape had a skid steer loader, all kinds of stuff there. And Tuesday, the plan is to bring some good soil in for us and to fill up the hole. We've picked out 3 trees and some shrubs, and if it's okay by Liz, I haven't been able to connect with her yet, we're hoping to plant them Tuesday. We have pilings. We're going to do 3 pilings with rope around it. They were donated by Precision Marine, and we're hoping to get them set, and then we need the irrigation, and we're done for this fall. Other things happening is, for the first time, Main Street's going to walk in the Christmas parade. We're very excited. We're going to be led by Dan's truck, decorated for Christmas, so that's kind of fun. Wreaths Across America, our 2nd annual, will be held on December 17th at noon. We'd love to have you come. We really don't anticipate any changes because we felt like it was wonderful last year. We are seeking a couple of the branches of the military we're looking for. We have Air Force, Army, and I think Navy. If anybody knows of a Coastie, or I doubt we have any Space Force folks yet, but we're looking for other branches of the military, so check with us if you know of someone. We did take advantage of Wreath Across America's buy 2, get 1 free last year, so we've already got all of our wreaths paid for. We're really excited about that. And the last thing is, for Thanksgiving, Main Street is offering free tours of our Rehoboth Then and Now self-guided walking tour that's on your phone. So from today through next Sunday, the 27th, you can do the tour free by going to Built Story app. We have posters around. If you just download the app, it's free. And we would like to recommend that you use the audio option. You can either read it or you can do audio, because we were lucky enough to have NPR radio personality Leanne Hansen and David Warwick do the narration for us. So to hear the 2 of them tell the story is more fun than reading it on your phone. So please take advantage of that. And if you do, give us some likes, because the more likes we get, the more tours people will take. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Cindy, I think Steve said we now have a Marine representative, and so we're just looking for
We have
Coast
2
Guard
left?
and Merchant Marines.
Okay, good. If anybody knows of any, please let us know.
Thank you very much. Next. There you go.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Dan Slagle, Executive Director of Main Street. I just want to talk about our fashion show this past Sunday. It was a huge success. I want to thank the staff at the Convention Center for helping us out. Wow, the 16 participants of retail was in the fashion show. Also, we had a lot of vendors selling their items. They sold so much they had to leave and go get more and bring back. So we had over 200 tickets sold, and we felt it was a huge success for our first annual fashion show. So I wanted to give you a little bit of info about that. But the biggest goal was to promote our downtown retail. So we're really excited about that. Also, Main Street is the Winter Wonderland Delaware Toy and Coat giveaway. We have became a destination at the 509 Rehoboth Avenue, the RBMS office. So please, K through 8th grade, we're looking for brand new coats to be donated for this drive. So it is called a Winter Wonderland Delaware Toy and Coat giveaway. Also, I'm very excited to say we have our Community Unity coming up. It is on December 4th from 4:30 to 7:30. It again is our Community Unity dinner, and we'll have ice cream bar. We have a Cape Jazz band, also Santa and Mrs. Claus. So tickets are being sold at the RBMS office. So we're really excited about that. And I believe, usually we have a Cocoa Crawl around December every year. This year it's called our Hometown for the Holidays. And we're really excited about it. It's the Rehoboth Beach Holiday Stroll. We're asking retailers, restaurants, have food. We're going to have carolers walking around. So that will be on December 10th from 12 to 4. And any questions?
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Greer?
One of the other nice things about the holiday stroll is that a lot of places have picked up on the theme and are actually offering additional specials and things throughout the evening. So take advantage of all those. We are in our inaugural year of doing a day of giving with Main Street. And on the November 29th, we're going to start our 19 hours and 26 minutes. And you say, how do you come 1926? It's our founding year that we were founded, so we're going to take advantage of that. And we're soliciting for donations to Main Street to help with additional programs and to, again, draw the residents and community and the businesses more and more together in the next year. So on behalf of us, I want to thank you for everything you've been doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greer. With that, we're going to go to the next item of business, which is liaison for the Cape Henlopen Senior Center.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to mention that this Saturday, November 19th, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the annual craft holiday fair at the Senior Center. It's open to everyone, and they've got quite a few great vendors that will be there. And the next pancake breakfast is on January 12th from 8:30 to 10 a.m. And for $7, you can get coffee, OJ, pancakes, and sausage, which is a great fundraiser for the Senior Center, and hope everyone can go.
You okay?
That's it.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the next item of business, which is a public hearing of a permit of compliance request by Vincent Robertson Esquire of the law firm Parkowski, Work and Swayze, PA, on behalf of Rehoboth Hotel LLC to operate a new restaurant serving alcoholic beverages to be known as Sirocco, pursuant to the City of Rehoboth Beach Municipal Code, Chapter 215, Restaurants. The restaurant will be located at 123 2nd Street. We have a protocol here. I see Vince is already up at the lectern. We have a protocol that we will have the city solicitor indicate the purpose of this function and what the process is going to be. But before we do that, I'd like to ask Vince for the proper spelling of this restaurant. We inadvertently have spelled it 3 different ways.
I'm going to ask the other Vince. I'm here with Vince DeFonso. He's with the Rehoboth Hotel. I want to say it's S-I-R-R. I just brought you the logo. How about that? There you go.
There you go. S-I-R-O-C-C-O. We got it. It's actually, we got it on here. Thank you very much. Glenn, you're next then.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a permanent compliance hearing, as the mayor mentioned, and a hearing of this type is required for a restaurant that's seeking to serve alcohol. Under Section 215.2 of the City Code, it indicates that no person shall operate, maintain, or carry out the business of a restaurant or dinner theater governed by this chapter until the owner or lessee has received a permit of compliance from the city stating that said restaurant or dinner theater is in compliance with all of the city's applicable zoning and licensing requirements. Then it goes on in section 215-5 to say that no applicant shall receive a permit of compliance or a supplemental permit of compliance from the city until after a public hearing, which is what's occurring today, and at which hearing interested parties and citizens shall have an opportunity to be heard. Finally, a permit of compliance or a supplemental permit of compliance, this is also from code, shall not be issued to the applicant or to the Delaware Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission except by the favorable vote of a majority of the members of the city commissioners. In reaching their decision, the commissioners shall consider the following factors, including but not limited to. First, whether the applicant has demonstrated that the establishment's primary purpose will be that of a restaurant or dinner theater as defined in this chapter. Second, whether the establishment meets all of the city's applicable zoning and licensing provisions. Third, whether the establishment would be a detriment to the peace, order, and quiet of the neighborhood and the city. Fourth, whether the establishment will have an adverse impact on the neighboring properties or on the City of Rehoboth Beach, considering the impact on traffic, parking, and noise. And finally, whether the applicant had made any false representation or statements to the city's employees or the commissioners in order to induce or prevent action by the city, not only in regard to the pertinent pending application under this chapter, but also in regard to the issuance of a building permit or business license for the subject establishment. So those are the considerations, commissioners, that you should keep in mind as this application proceeds. There's some materials that all the commissioners have received and are also embedded in the agenda that I want to place on the record. First is a public notice of this hearing for Sirocco Restaurant, SIROCCO. It was posted on October 27, 22. It was published in the Cape Gazette on Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. It was published in the Coast Press on Wednesday, November 9, 2022, published in the Delaware State News on Thursday, November 3rd, 2022, and all residents within 200 feet have received a copy of the public notice. Second, there's a building inspector's report. Mr. Janis is going to issue that in just a moment. It's from Mr. Janis to the mayor and commissioners dated November 2nd, 2022, concerning application number 0822-04, restaurant permit of compliance for Sirocco. Third, there's an application for permit of compliance. It was received by the Office of the Secretary on August 24, 2022. The application indicates being an application for a new restaurant permit of compliance. And just to be clear, this is a new restaurant. No supplemental permits have been requested. The submittal checklist is attached and signed by Tom Hanna. It includes a stamp indicating the fee of $1,000 has been paid. Also included is the checklist for compliance with zoning code, sections 270-19, which is titled Use Restrictions. There is a sample menu for Sirocco. Next, there are 5 sheets of floor plans prepared by North Star. They're in the 8.5 by 11 format. They're stamped received by the Office of the Secretary on August 24, 2022. All sheets are dated May 27, 2022, and those 5 sheets include a lower level sheet, 2 first floor plan sheets, a second floor plan sheet, a third floor plan sheet, and a fourth floor plan sheet. There's also the same set of sheets have been provided electronic, this time though in 11 by 17 format. And then finally, you have a 37-page presentation that's titled the Coast Presentation. And that is what's on the record.
A lot of fluff in this packet, but
There is. We're not going to go through all 37 pages or each of the
so
the
here's
floors of
the
hotel either.
packet. You're actually up here prematurely before we have the report, but before you step down and let Matt up there, I wanted Glenn to take a brief minute to explain the liquor license process. As you know, the permit of compliance is for us to determine whether they meet conditions in zoning code, et cetera, relative to serving alcohol in a restaurant, right? But I've had questions from some commissioners and constituents on, I think they saw something in the paper that the hotel is applying for a hotel liquor license. So I'd like Glenn to explain that, and then you can confirm whether we hit it on the head or not.
Sure, and Mr. Robinson may want to supplement my comments, but this is a situation that repeats. It's several places in the city. I mean, so a hotel license to serve, Atlantic Sands has it, Avenue Inn has it, but the restaurant is a component of obtaining that hotel license. You have to have a restaurant component to get the hotel license. So this part is you as commissioners authorizing the restaurant component, certificate of compliance. Then the city will go through the process of issuing a letter saying that hotel is a permitted use in this zoning district, and that's the piece that the applicant would need to actually obtain the hotel license as well. Is that how you see it, or?
Well,
Yeah.
and I'd like you to go further and explain exactly what hotel license means. Can they be served liquor in their room? Can they go out on their balcony and consume liquor from the hotel? Can they, what are the parameters there? Because again, it's somewhat new to us, even though other hotels do that.
Right, now, so there will be areas licensed, just like there is a restaurant there's areas that are licensed, and outdoor dining, the ABCC licenses those areas. The hotel, I suppose they could choose areas to not seek a license, but typically the entire hotel is licensed so that service people can, for example, for room service people can deliver alcohol through the hallways to somebody having a meal in their room with an alcoholic beverage. So there's a licensing component to it, but it's a separate license in that it covers the hotel.
So, yeah, so how Vince Robertson with Parkowski, Girk, and Swayze, on behalf of the Rehoboth Hotel LLC. There's two components of this, as Glenn said. There's the city component and the state component. For the hotel liquor license for the state, you must have a full-service restaurant in the hotel. In other words, they won't grant you a hotel liquor license if you don't serve food and you don't have a restaurant. And it can't be a restaurant space that you lease to somebody else. It has to be part and parcel of that hotel operation. It has to be full service. And the hotel license issued by the state, as Glenn mentioned, essentially allows room service to occur. And with what my clients have found at multiple places is if you want to be an upscale hotel that caters to certain clientele, you need to be able to have room service that brings food and beverages to your room, should you choose as one of the customers. So that means that we do have a restaurant in the hotel, which is the basis for the permanent compliance this afternoon. If you see fit to grant that permanent compliance, we'll be able to operate the restaurant subject to the DABCC, but then we'll take that permanent compliance, provide that to the state liquor board, and they'll see that, yes, we are approved for a restaurant, therefore we can get the hotel license as well.
All right, thank you. So I just thought it was important to articulate that. It's happening around town. A lot of the hotels have it. It's not something that we're necessarily have been aware of, and that we do not have any control over it. All we have control over is the actual permanent compliance application. So any questions of Glenn on this? Is that clear? Do you want to take the lectern? And
Sure.
he's going to give his report first, Vince, and
that's
then
fine.
we'll come back to you.
I wasn't sure if you were going to stay down there.
Thanks, Mayor. Before you today is application number 0822-04, Restaurant Permit of Compliance for the Sirocco, spelled SIROCCO, which is part of the Coast Hotel, 123 2nd Street, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 19971. This is an application for a new permit of compliance for a proposed restaurant to be known as Sirocco and will be a new license in the state. This application does not include any application for a supplemental permit of compliance dining patio. The following is a complete report for the application referenced above to be heard pursuant to Section 215-3. The applicant is Rehoboth Hotel LLC, 405 East Marsh Lane, Suite 1, Newport, Delaware, 19804. The name of the restaurant is Sirocco, not with an A, with an O, located inside Coastal Hotel. The restaurant is a table service establishment serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Again, the restaurant will be located at 123 2nd Street, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 19971. Pursuant to the plans submitted, the following is true. The property is located at 123 2nd Street, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 19971. The structure is a multi-story building with a hotel use and a proposed area for permanent seated dining in a C1 Central Commercial Zoning District. Pursuant to Section 27013C3D, a restaurant serving alcoholic beverages is a permitted use. Next, we get into the area calculations. Service area, kitchen facilities, storage, restrooms, employee stations, hallways, and utilities. The proposed was 1281. I have them calculated at 1045. I do see that I missed the bathrooms, but adding those in is not going to put them over their limits. The dining area is 1,001 square feet as proposed. I have them calculated as 870 square feet. The permanent seated dining, they have listed as 88, and admittedly, they got that incorrect. It is actually 56 seats and not 88 seats. The bar area is 323 square feet. I have that calculated as 206 square feet. If you look at their drawing there, you can see the green area that is inclusive of their bar area. However, we calculate 18 inches to the back of the bar stools as the bar area. And recall that in the city of Rehoboth, you are not allowed to stand and consume alcohol. So I do not count that area as bar area. I count that area as service area. Obviously, there is no dance floor for this proposal. Bar seats listed as 8. I have calculated 8. Restaurant gross floor area is listed, proposed as 2,762 square feet. I have them calculated at just 2,835 square feet. Ratio of bar to permanent seated dining was not filled out on my application, so I listed that as 0% proposed, but when I calculated it, it's actually at 14.28%. Pursuant to Section 215-1 definitions, there is no patio for this permit of compliance, so no dogs will be allowed to inhabit that area. The designated areas for proposed food storage and preparation are shown and labeled on the attached plans. The distance to the nearest property lines of the nearest church, public park, and residential lot are as follows. All Saints Episcopal Church is approximately 1,677 feet by way of 2nd Street to Olive Avenue. Lake Gerard is approximately 400 feet by way of north on 2nd Street. And the nearest residential lot zoned R2 is 60 Maryland Avenue, approximately 175 feet north on 2nd Street. The applicant has stated that the approximate percentage of revenue between the sale of alcohol and food is 30% alcohol and 70% food. Authorization for the city to investigate is attached. Written and dated declaration by the applicant is attached. The fee of $1,000 has been paid. Any questions? Sir.
Clarification. So did you say that you're not allowed to stand and consume alcohol in Rehoboth?
In the city of Rehoboth, that is correct.
Where? At any restaurant?
At any restaurant, yeah,
About bars?
any establishment, there's no standing for consumption. So you must be seated to consume alcohol in the city of Rehoboth.
Thanks.
Sit down.
You need to get out more.
And kind of clarification, you've got proposed and calculated.
Correct.
So proposed is what's on the floor plan?
That would be correct.
So
proposed is actually what they submitted in their application, the information derived from their application.
Would the floor plan then be revised to your measurements, or so to have an accurate floor plan on file? How does that flow?
Typically, what I do is I submit my floor plan that I've calculated in as part of the package, if you will, of the permit of compliance.
Okay.
So what we were approving would be the calculated, I believe.
But then would there be an existing corrected floor plan, if you will?
We
on
certainly
file?
could get a corrected floor plan in.
I'm just sure. I'm just curious because we do theoretically review that annually, so that to have accuracy of what's proposed what's versus calculated. So
yes.
I guess the only other question that I had, and this maybe could be addressed, I guess, when you come up, Vince. So that's okay. Thanks.
Want to wait for that? Any further questions of building and licensing?
Thanks, Mayor and Commissioners.
Not, we'll go to Vince.
Thank you. I'm still Vince Robertson from Parkowski, Girk, and Swayze. So as I mentioned, I am here on behalf of Rehoboth Hotel LLC, and I am still here with Vince DeFonso, who's going to operate the food and beverage service with that company. I always like coming to do these. They sort of make your mouth water and look forward to something new coming to Rehoboth when you do these permits of compliance. And I think they're kind of fun too because it shows the evolution of Rehoboth in terms of its food and beverage. I sort of look at this, and I know it's in the documentation we submitted, which we're not going to go through in any real detail. southern Delaware and Rehoboth is part of what we call the Culinary Coast, and we really feel like this concept, it's a Southern European style restaurant, is really going to be in furtherance in that and pull people into the city of Rehoboth for good dining. It is an upscale restaurant, and it is within the hotel. It is open to the public. To Mr. Gossett's question, I was going to get to that. It actually sort of addresses a couple of points. We were talking about the types of licensing. Both with the city and with the state, we have to submit floor plans. The city's obviously going to inspect those for the restaurant, and the state will as well. We're not going to get our state liquor license without that inspection. Matt and I, there's been an evolution of this. We've had some really good meetings with city building and licensing just on the plans for the restaurant. There was original plans submitted. We were thinking about doing outside seating. We're not doing that. Maybe, who knows, some point in the future, I don't know, but we pulled that out. That's some of the reason the numbers changed. And Matt and I had a good conversation. I think he would agree for the most part, we're talking about the same physical space. It's just how you allocate that physical space. We're fine with getting the floor plan with Matt's numbers on it and using that. I haven't seen it yet, but based on our discussions, I don't think there's an issue with that. But I would like, though, to have that. We can't get the liquor license until the hotels and the restaurant's completed, but it'll be useful to have that because then we can supplement that to the state. That way everybody's on the same sheet music, floor plan wise. So I know that kind of got a little bit far afield. This is the location where we've had several restaurants over the decades. I go far enough back. I remember Tijuana Taxi was there, which is a fun place. There was some intervening restaurants that have been there. The most recent was Conch Island, which, as you know, has moved out of town. This concept is about as polar opposite as you can get, I think, from Conch Island. They're just totally different concepts. This is meal and high-end beverage oriented. One of the things in our application was that it was a 70%, 30% food to alcohol ratio. That's within the the normal ranges, I think. But I just wanted to point out the 30% is really more driven by the quality of the beverage service. In other words, they're going to focus on high-end cocktails and wines, not a million Miller Lights or whatever, that we see at other restaurants. So because that is a revenue number, that's based on revenue, not quantity of drinks. So again, we look at that as being a product of the quality of the food and beverage service that will be served there. The bar it's 8 seats, as you saw. That's not going to be a driver in terms of revenue or clients. We look at that as being more or less ancillary to the meal service, and it's an accommodation to the guests, and not a primary focus of the restaurant or the meal and beverage service. We do agree that there's 56 table seats. That was part of the evolution of the plans. So this is part of the overall renovation of the Sandcastle Motel. I think when that is all said and done, that's going to be a vast improvement over what was there before. That hotel had not been renovated in quite some time, and you can see the renovations that are occurring now. It is going to be on a prominent corridor here in the city, and we think this restaurant's going to be a great addition to that prominent corridor. So with that, I'd ask Vince DeFonso to come up. If you could just sort of briefly explain for the commission sort of the menu and make everybody's mouth water.
Thank you very much. My name is Vince DeFonso, and
Pull that microphone close to you, Vince.
Sure.
There you go.
Sure.
Thank you.
Vince DeFonso, and I'm the president of a company called TKO Hospitality, a partner with the developers here. We own, operate, manage 15 hotels, restaurants through the Mid-Atlantic region, Allentown, PA, Newark, Delaware, down to Ocean City, Dewey Beach. So I'm an Italian guy. My dad was in the Italian restaurant business. One of my partners is Greek, from Greece. He worked for Hilton International, was one of the chefs at some of the Hiltons in Athens. He's now in Allentown, PA. Sirocco, what that definition means, Sirocco are the winds that blow over the Mediterranean Sea over the southern parts of Europe. Our food is inspired by, all foods are going to be coming from Italy, Greece, Spain, and France. That's where the derivatives of the food. All the foods are fresh. We're excited about it. I think you'll be very proud of this restaurant in town here. We've already been working on it. We have a sommelier in our company who's working on all the wines, which will be from that region, as well as U.S. wines. The decor is, very coastal elegance. It's an upscale decor. We picked a lot of tiles on the floors that you will maybe resemble if you were in Spain or Greece on the flooring. The windows are operable windows, so you could open them, get some open air, which is important today with the COVID world, and to give you that little Mediterranean feel as well. Some of the food samplings, we have like a lemon chicken orzo soup. We'll have truffled gnocchi. We obviously have a Greek salad. We have a caprese salad, whole bronzinos, nice big Tuscan ribeye steak, some Mediterranean scallops. Stuff, not heavy sausage, a lot of fresh stuff. I think it fits right in with the clientele that we're trying to drive and the clientele that comes to Rehoboth. We see it as being an upscale property. We're not looking to do massive 3, 4, 5 turns. I think this is a 2-hour dining experience that we're trying to create here.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions? We'll go back to you, Vince.
If I could just wrap up, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Real fast, as I do want to touch upon the points that we need for granting a permit of compliance, if I could. So the first one is whether the applicant has demonstrated that the establishment's primary purpose will be a restaurant. As I mentioned, this is part of the culinary coast. We heard from Mr. DeFonso that it's going to be, I think, really good, and I think I look forward to going there, and I hope you do as well. As we said, the primary focus is food. One thing I heard, which harkened me back to the prior establishment, the windows do open, but we're not having any live music or live entertainment of the sort that was there before, so I don't want you to be concerned there won't be any noise generated from the premises like may have happened in the past. I'll leave it at that. Does the restaurant meet the zoning provisions of the city? Yes, it's in the commercial district. It is on Rehoboth Avenue, and there's been various restaurants in that general location over the years. Sort of what I just touched upon, will the restaurant be a detriment to the peace, good order, and quiet of the neighborhood and the city? It actually, I think it'll be a positive impact on that corner, and I think it will be welcomed by the city, the businesses, and residents and guests to our city. And will the restaurant have an adverse impact on the neighboring properties of the city, considering traffic, parking, and noise? Again, I think the answer to that's an unequivocal no. It's not going to generate any additional traffic. It's actually a little bit smaller of a footprint than the one that's currently there. There won't be the noise that we've seen in the past, and parking won't be an issue. And then finally, there were no false representations. As good as the food was, I'm not going to lose my license over making a false representation to the city. So with that, we'd like to conclude the presentation and answer any questions.
Thank you. Vince, I think this is my drawing up there.
Okay.
Did you want to show anything? I did also enlarge this for the commissioners at my initiative, just
No.
so that I could actually see something. You're okay?
Actually, I had it on the screen, and I was assuming that was mine. I believe that's the same. We're looking at the
Same
same
thing. All right.
Just so everybody knows, this was the methodology we used to calculate the square footage. And speaking with Mr. Janis, same area, just different shades. But we have to be under because it's a restaurant within a hotel. The code says 3,750 square feet, and we're like under Matt's calculations, and some of ours were higher, some of ours were lower than his, but using his, we were at 2,835 square feet, so we're way under the thresholds for a restaurant in Rehoboth. So.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions by the commissioners? Commissioner Bennett?
I have one question. Is TKO Hospitality, is that a independent group, or is this a franchise of a larger hotel?
No.
Oh, no, can't.
Yeah,
You have to come to the microphone if you want to
there's
speak.
that one there. Vince, if you want to come up.
We're missing our microphone.
Yeah, I
We'll
realize
go
that.
over to that one now, if you would, Lou.
They're part owners of this hotel.
Speak close to the
They're
microphone.
one of the LLC members of the Rehoboth Hotel.
TKO Hospitality, there's 3 partners. We're an LLC, myself, a gentleman by the name of Tom Harvey, another guy, Kostas Kalogeropoulos. We're a LLC, privately managed. We're out of here. I have an offices down in Dewey Beach, and we have offices up in Newport And
Yeah, I
obviously
just
not-
didn't know, do you guys run any large franchise hotels like a Hilton, Hyatt?
Yeah, we have the Hyatt in Dewey, we have a Hyatt Regency up in Allentown, PA, we built the Hyatt up in Lewis, we have a Marriott up in Newark, Delaware. I'm building a Hyatt that we're opening in a couple weeks.
So you act almost like a franchisee then?
Yeah, we're a franchisee group, yeah, but we're the the hotels are confusing. You have the ownership entity, the management and development, but yeah, we're the same group. Yeah, we've been in this 40 years.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else?
Yeah, just a couple questions. And maybe between Glenn and you can help me better understand the hotel license. So does that allow beverage, the room service and what have you, but anywhere in the building itself? Is that defined anywhere specific in the code or?
So in Title IV that deals with liquor licenses for the state, it allows service anywhere that's approved by the state. And so we have to do the same thing that we're doing here, although for the whole hotel. So we have to submit a floor plan to the hotel, or of the hotel to the state that allows service based on what's on that floor plan. So, and I don't know if this is where the questions are going, obviously the rooms are the rooms, but you couldn't change, for example, the layout that's shown up here on the screen without coming back to you and also going back to the state.
I guess my question is if, I think this is a great plan and I'm really looking forward to it opening in the upscale hotel, better than the 2-star resort that's been quoted. But just curious that if service in the lobby, for instance, does the hotel license, the liquor license allow service to go into the lobby?
So that's somewhat of a technical word when you say service. So we couldn't put a bar or anything in the lobby,
Right.
Like that. But the hotel license allows somebody to, and I think you could do that now under the state liquor guidelines because they opened it up as a result of COVID. But you could leave that bar with your drink, and go anywhere in the hotel.
Maybe our code made a little revision or application to a hotel license, because in part of the use restriction is that restaurants be totally enclosed, excepting an area included in a validly, having trouble with the word, issued dining patio supplemental certificate of compliance. So I'm just looking at this, is that a wall or is that just open space where the green areas that says bar? Is that a wall or is that, I think.
Well, no, to your point, regardless of the hotel license by the state, as I mentioned, they still need a restaurant component of the hotel owned by the same entity that owns the hotel.
Correct.
So that restaurant component is going to require on the floor plan there to be barriers, and they're flexible on what that can be, whether that's plantings or
I understand.
But there's a
that.
demarcation.
Yeah. So because we in a supplemental permit of compliance for outdoor dining, patios or on public property, we require those specifically designed barriers that flows down from the state reg. So
yeah, right. And I will say, so sort of stepping aside from this one, I would caution you on regulating too much, and I would ask for input from the hotels that operate in the city, because one of the things that I think this one may become, and I think it's good for the cities if we do get some of the more franchise hotels in, because then they're part of a larger system that gets more tourism, more people coming to Rehoboth Beach. They have also specific design guidelines, involved, and I think that should just be part of the conversation. The other thing is, with COVID and the way the state liquor laws, they've sort of been opened up a lot. So what used to matter, where you can't take liquor anymore, doesn't really matter anymore. It's all to go. And
totally agree with that and support that. I'm just saying maybe we need to revise our codes somewhat to reflect what the uses are of today. And the other kind of following along with that, I noticed on the third floor you've got pool and decking area. Is there any intention of food and beverage service in that area?
No, I mean, if somebody wanted to take to-go food up there, that would be it. Again, because we'd have to come back in with an amended floor plan to show specific food and beverage service up there.
That's why I just wasn't understanding the hotel license. If we can do room service, it's technical, but I'm just saying maybe we need to take a closer look at our code to allow this type of thing coming, because it's great, and I think that's what the public desires. So to be able to meet those.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's a fair point. So.
Anybody else? I've got a couple things real quick while we have that on the screen there for everybody. I want to make sure they are oriented Vince, confirm with me, this area out here is Rehoboth Avenue.
That's correct.
This down here parallels North 2nd Street.
That's also
The
correct.
post office would be right on the opposite side of the street here, just so everybody's oriented. Also, FYI, where this D is on the outside of the property, outside the property line, of course, this is city-owned property out here. Well, approximately where the D is, the property owner has a license agreement with the city that allows them to have a dumpster there for trash. I know the city manager approached somebody from the project months ago and asked if they had any intention or could relocate that on property so that we could dissolve the license agreement. Do you have any knowledge of follow-through?
I
on
don't,
that at
Mr.
all?
Mayor, on that. So that the license was in effect for the sandcastle. I mean, it's been there for quite some time. It actually got assigned to my folks by the city. I don't have an answer for that. The reason is because we're working with an existing building, and in this case, the footprint of it, particularly that parking garage, is designed in such a way I don't know that there's room. But I'll certainly go back to them and talk to them about it.
All right, thank you. I mean, the goal of the city generally is always to try to get rid of license agreements if we can. The second question is the same topic, trash and garbage. There's no mention of where the trash and garbage for the restaurant would be taken and stored. And that's always been a concern of the mayor and commissioners for pretty much every permanent compliance I've heard in the last 2 decades. Where's the trash? Is it going to be visible? Is it going to be an odor? And so do you have you contemplated where that's going to be?
So as I mentioned, first of all, that the dumpster location, they have a license for it, and that's been the same dumpster location that Tijuana Taxi through 3 intervening properties through Conch Island has used. So for right now, that's the location of it. And actually, in terms of the impact upon neighboring or adjacent properties, I know the city's a neighboring property, but it's far away from any other buildings where in that location wouldn't have an impact. But the other factor I'd point out is that this restaurant, I think, is about half the size of what Conch Island was. And so the volume will, I think, be significantly less than was there before. So, but it's certainly something we'll explore with regard to that license as well. I'll talk to my folks about that.
Well, thank you, Vince. I'd just like to go on the record that for me, at least, it's very important about the sightliness of trash, that it's, for instance, not stored outside of the gated area where that dumpster is, if that's what we retain or you retain. And similarly, if you're going to increase the amount of seafood that's sold or consumed compared to previous restaurants or whatever, I don't want to smell it either because that's a city parking lot. So I just thought that it's important to recognize those 2 notes.
Yeah, well, and point taken, and I just want to assure everybody that this is going to be a much different property than it was, say, 2 years ago. So my clients are interested in being a good partner with the city. I mean, obviously, it's on the same block as City Hall and the fire company. They want this to be an upscale property. It doesn't do them any good to have trash all over the place or odors any more than it would, do any good for the city and the fire company and visitors to the city parking in that parking lot either. So, no, understood. And I can assure you we're not going to have any issues with that. So.
Very good. Thank you. With that, this is a public hearing. If there's nothing more to be said by the commissioners right at this point, you'll have your opportunity again. But this is a public hearing. Was there anybody that's here that would like to speak for or against or just have comment? Carol, come up and identify yourself and your affiliation with the city, please.
Carol Everhart, Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce. I'd just like to speak in support. We keep saying we want today's amenities, and we want to keep yesterday's charm. And this looks like a perfect example of that. And we are the culinary capital on the culinary coast. So that's another reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Anybody else? Mr. Dewey, you can come, either one is fine. Just state your name and your relationship to the city.
John Dewey, I reside at 105 Scarborough Avenue. I would first like to preface my remarks by saying, much as Carol just referenced, we're really happy to see that that building is being completely renovated. If you've not been in the Hilton down in Dewey Beach, it's a beautiful interior. The food service is excellent. I'm confident it's going to be a real nice experience for everybody once it gets in place. But as always, the devil is in the details. When I look at some of the drawings seem to indicate a wall system called a nano wall. When I look at examples of nano walls, the examples I have seen, there may be others, are floor to ceiling and able to be fully opened. So I don't know whether that is current or not current, because that conflicts with the drawings, the schematics that are in the slide presentation. My question around that is around noise intrusion. I do hear the business model that's being described by the owners and managers, and I think that's going to be a great improvement. But as the Commission is very much aware, we have been dealing with increasing levels of really bad noise intrusion into the South of Rehoboth neighborhood. So what I would ask the commissioners to consider is, first, what is the actual design for the front of the building as it faces Rehoboth Avenue? It's not clear to me which is the correct design. If the nano wall is the correct design, and I hear the description of the current business model, but I also don't have awareness that the restaurant license prohibits them from having private parties or other special events that could have loudspeakers, that could have loud music, that could have loud bands, that could have DJs, and thereby add noise intrusion into our neighborhoods. Thank you for hearing me out, and I hope those points can be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public, pro or con, comments? I think that's worth exploring there, Vince, if you don't mind. A nano wall, I assume, is one of these accordion walls, perhaps, that if it's on the exterior of the building, then indeed, if it fully opens 100%, then it seems to me it could violate the requirement for a barrier. So I'd like you to address that. And then the second thing would be, because barriers are required in restaurants, right?
The licensed area.
Am I starting to mix it up with outdoor dining barriers?
I know where you're going, but as Vince mentioned, the restaurants, there are barriers required within the restaurant as well.
So here I'm looking at the drawing here, and is there a sufficient barrier around the restaurant so that there are only entrance ways?
So I'm not sure the gentleman's speaking to, but in the information we submitted, I mean, there's walls with windows. I mean, I'm not sure, there's not any garage door style or folding walls.
It's an operative window. Nano's a brand, so that goes flush open. It is not, you cannot walk from the restaurant outside. You have one door. That's the main door. That's our entrance to the hotel and to the restaurant. When you're inside, I forget the height, but it's this high, the window from the ground.
Right here.
I don't know the exact height, but it's a window that opens. And the reason we wanted that was because of COVID, was the old open air. We do not plan on doing private parties. I mean, this is at the end of the day, this is part of a hotel. Our goal is to run an upscale property where we're not into, this is not Dewey where we're doing events and parties on the deck outside. This is intended to have a service for our hotel guests, service for the local community, to present a nice upscale restaurant. When you go to a hotel, nothing pisses you off more if you can't go to the restaurant because they got a private party. Excuse my French. That is not our intent. We have enough public. If someone wants a private party, I got 14,000 square feet in Dewey. We could send them there. We have no intent, and that's not the purpose. I mean, that's these communal tables that are in here, where you can see, are pretty heavy. I don't know if you see the drawings. They're permanent. If I could go back to the floor plan. Yeah, I'm sorry. there's two communal tables that you see in the pink area, and I can't, you see the six tops that are right there? Those are large tables that are not going to be able to move too easily with a marble top. These are, I don't know what more I could tell you. It's windows that open, and the intent, our intent was to have the Mediterranean feel. Don't have live music. Put in our light, we don't, that's surely not our intent.
The other thing,
In all honesty, COVID has encouraged people, restaurateurs, you want open air. People want to go places with open air. I mean, I highly, we did that on the intent of what today's restaurant scene is like. It's not to blast the town.
Thanks, Vince. The other thing is too, I mean, there's an easy answer too, is that we didn't apply for any live music as part of our state liquor license. So because we didn't apply for it, we can't have it. I mean, that would be a violation of the state license. So.
Yeah, clarify for me. My understanding, old rule 42.1, the variance, I think the date number's been updated, but in the old days for patios, you could seek a variance to have music on it. Are you saying that when you apply for the state license, say for this hotel liquor license, that you also have to articulate whether you have music or not?
I will put it this way. There's a new commissioner, and that question is asked in the application process, whether there will be, not speakers, not like ambient music, but whether you're going to have live entertainment because you need to show where that's going to emanate from within the premises. So I'm not sure that shows up anywhere in the rules, but that's been a point of emphasis of the current commissioner. So, yeah.
Well, I think the one drawing does indicate nano wall here, but the rendering, that front elevation shows that it's not open. We usually like to see with clarity all the details, or as much as we can. So again, we just wanted to reiterate that for the exterior wall, there have to be sufficient barriers, not just for us, but for the state code, and then interior barrier walls also. So, but another component that is very important is the noise issue. Now, you've said once, actually now twice, that you weren't intending to have any music or dancing and everything. Of course, we know dancing floors have to be articulated, so you can't just add that later. You would have to come back in front of this group. But also that you're not going to have any music. Now, Glenn, does that have the force of law, hearing that? Can they choose to add a live band when
I mean, they're
on the interior in the future without, or can we make it a condition or stipulation that to change that model, they would have to come back in front of us?
right, so they have the burden of persuasion to prove to the commissioners that they're in compliance with all of our zoning and licensing requirements. There's not a zoning or licensing requirement that they not have live music in there. They've said it on the record. If it's important to you and you think there's a reason that it would affect the health, welfare, safety of the community, if there's live music there, then you can attach conditions to your approval of a permanent compliance, but you need to articulate why music in a space like this is going to be a detriment to the community if you're going to attach that sort of a commitment.
And if I could just respond and perhaps make this gentleman feel a little more at ease, I get what he's coming from. It used to be, if you walk down Bayard Avenue, you'd hit about Newcastle, and you'd be able to hear the prior establishment almost 7 days a week in the summertime. You could. I mean, and it, you knew right where it was coming from. I guess it'd be, it was Bayard. I was thinking it was King Charles, but it was loud. We are the opposite of that. I think if you get to Rehoboth Avenue, you wouldn't know we were there except if you saw it. You can put a condition on it. I don't think that really matters because we're not going to do it. But I hope that you see from this model that there's not an intention, and it will be 180 degrees from what was there. I don't know, last summer, 2 summers ago for sure. So.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Our intent is to be closed at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock. This is not a late night place. We're a restaurant. Our midweek will probably be open from 4 to 10, maybe 11 on weekends. This is a dining experience. This is not a drinking. I mean, obviously, beverages are part of that component, but we're here to drive nice quality food, upscale dining, complemented by some great wines, some upscale liqueurs. That's the concept. This is not dancing. This is not what we're doing at the Lighthouse.
We hear you. I think, the concerns about noise, I think, are valid, especially with respect to what used to be there.
No,
And
true.
it's hard to get away from that, but I hear you, and I appreciate you addressing that and everything. With that, is there anybody else in the public, last chance to speak? If not, I'm closing the public hearing portion of this meeting and turn it over solely to the commissioners they can discuss it first, or I'll entertain a motion and then we can discuss it.
Mayor, go ahead,
I
Patrick.
just have a question, if I may, and maybe address this to the building inspector. But you've stated that the third floor area, the pool area, there's no intention for food service. But would that, and again, I'm not clear on the hotel license aspect of this, but if food service were to happen up there, would that be considered a dining patio? They'd have to come back for another permit of compliance?
I believe that is correct, Commissioner.
I'm sorry?
I believe that is correct, yes.
Okay, are you familiar enough with the hotel license issued by the state that allows this or not?
I am not. I would have to speak to council on it.
Okay, because again, it's something, a new direction, and in that sense, and I'm just trying to be clear on it so that we cover ourselves in the sense that if food and beverage is, room service, well, I'm staying at the pool, so you can give me a hamburger and fries and a cocktail, which I'm okay with, but that is in violation of our code, the way I would interpret it, that's an outdoor patio. So again, I'm just trying to update the code so that we can welcome this type of service, which I think is important to Rehoboth, but it's in conflict with the code at the moment if that occurs. So just trying to look down the road a little bit, because that's going to be a great place up there for Sea Witch and 4th of July to watch stuff going on. It's a great spot.
I hear you. I don't know that it's
I mean, I don't-
appropriate to address it right at this minute, but because I wouldn't look at a swimming pool, even though it has a deck around it, as a patio deck or a patio. It's not a dining patio. So I would be a little reluctant to do that, but I think we could certainly study that.
Well, again, I'm certainly in support of this, but I'm just trying to, the things don't stay the same all the time. So I'm just trying to, we've got 2 or 3 other hotels that are coming online that may have the same challenges. So if we could address our codes to meet those new upscale requirements, I think that's our responsibility to do that. So if we could take a look
I
at
consider that takeout, but I think it's worth Glenn taking a look at it as more of these may arise in the future. But without objection, I'd like to move this forward now.
Well, offer a motion?
Commissioner Legree, did you have anything?
No, I'm good. I'm sure that's going to happen. People will be sitting around the pool and
Yeah, but they
wanna have a
can
burger and
go
drink.
to Love Liquors and get a case of beer and do the same thing too.
Well,
I'd like to make a motion to grant a restaurant permit of compliance for Sirocco located at 123 Second Street. I find the following to be true: that the proper application for a restaurant permit of compliance has been filed, that the proper fee has been paid, that the proper notification has been made, that all parties wishing to be heard have been heard, that the primary purpose is that of a restaurant based on their application and menu submitted, that the restaurant meets the city's applicable zoning and licensing provisions, that the restaurant would not be a detriment to the peace, order, and quiet of the neighborhood and the city, that the restaurant will not have an adverse impact on the neighboring properties or on the City of Rehoboth Beach, considering that impact on traffic, parking, and noise, that the applicant has made no false statements to the city's employees or to the commissioners. I therefore make a motion that the city manager issue the applicants a permit of compliance for the operation of a restaurant for Sirocco located at 123 Second Street.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ed Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Tim Bennett to authorize the city manager to issue the applicants a permit of compliance for the operation of a restaurant at 123
Second Street.
Second Street by the name of Sirocco. Is there any further discussion?
Just a clarification on my part. We had talked about the plans being not submitted that are actually approved by the building inspector. So is there some, I look to the solicitor, some type of amendment or addition to the motion that revised accurate plans be submitted, or?
I mean, sure, you could amend the motion to say that the permit cannot be actually issued until we get a revised set of plans. Is that something that?
That's fine. I mean, I think we can definitely come up with that, and it sounds like it's going to come from the city manager attached to that, so I don't foresee that as an issue.
I mean, every single one of these applications, there's always a variance in the square footage. It's minor. I mean, are we going to go that far that we need to attach all these nuances to each permit of compliance?
My personal is just to make it as clean as possible so that we don't come back to this with somebody questioning.
And I know the record's supposed to be closed. I would just say, working with the state, it's to my client's benefit and mine, and we're fine with the one I think that Matt's going to, we can formalize that if we need to. But that way, you'll have the same files as the state has, and there's not any dispute between the two, and there's not any jurisdictional issues and everything else. So I hear what you're saying. In this case, we're good with what the city's calculations are.
So you would be submitting a different set of plans to the state?
No. That's what I'm saying. I don't want that to happen for the restaurant. I want them to be the same. So we have this plan we're working off of with the state, but if the permit of compliance is issued by the city based on the city's plans, that's the one we're going to use, so that's all the same, if that makes sense. And maybe it's unusual because we're comfortable with that. There are different numbers, but in this case, we're fine with it.
I'm just saying, almost every single permit of compliance, the numbers are off slightly. Do you have a recommendation, Glenn?
Any further discussion?
And I think the commissioner's still asking, you still want to follow this? I mean,
do you have a recommendation on
Well, I think in this case, it's probably neither here nor there, since they've already represented on the record that they're going to correct the plans to be consistent with the cities. So, but my view is that what's important to the city is that the floor plan's accurate, the numbers of seats, the location of the tables, because that's the thing that the building officials are really looking at when they inspect the restaurants. And I think we have that in this instance, at least with this application.
we agree that it's the same? Okay.
So if there's no further amendments or motions, then I'd like to call the question. The question is motion to authorize city manager to issue the applicants a permit of compliance for the operation of a restaurant named Sirocco at 123 2nd Street. Commissioner Jay Legree?
I vote aye. I welcome the improvement. However, I really hear what Commissioner Gossett is saying, but I vote aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Chernowski?
I'm looking forward to it. I vote aye.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett?
I vote aye. Look forward to it.
Commissioner Tim Bennett?
I vote aye. Thank you for improving that area.
Thank you. I'm just the representative. These guys are spending the money.
Commissioner Marker?
I vote aye. I welcome a new addition to the city, and I feel that the applicant has met the requirements.
Thank you. And the chair votes aye also, so the motion carries, and you will be appropriately issued your permanent compliance as noted. Thank you very much. You all need not stay here. You may make your exit if you like.
We look forward to everybody trying a meal there.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you. I would like, as we exit this topic, I would like to let you know that I've asked the city manager to take a look at the permanent compliance application specifically to make some changes to it. Patrick, you and I worked on that a long time ago, and I think you agree with me that we no longer want to offer the opportunity of a split liquor license where you can choose between beer and wine and liquor. It's all one liquor license, period. And then the second thing I would like on the application, a requirement that the trash and garbage areas be articulated. So with that, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is the first item of old business. Consider reappointments to the Audit Committee. There's a support document in there somewhere. Let's see. Goodness gracious, they submitted a lot of documents. There we go. This is nothing new to us. This was introduced at our November 2nd or November 7th workshop. The three current members are Jim Horty, Jim Little, and Bill Pearlstein. And I would like to nominate them for continuance on this audit committee. Is there any discussion before, or I ask for a motion to appoint these three gentlemen back to the audit committee?
Could I ask a question of Bert?
Sure.
Was Jim Horty present at the audit meeting?
No, we have a memo in. There's a later topic on considering the audit. This is only appointing the three members.
And that's why I'm asking this question.
Okay. He was undergoing physical therapy and was not at the meeting, but we had a quorum.
Of course.
Jim Little and Mr. Pearlstein were both there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He listened, by the way, virtually, but he couldn't. Mr. Horty was there at the meeting virtually, but he could not vote because he wasn't present.
Yeah.
Well, attendance is very important to me, but I want to let you know, we did not give but minimal notice for that meeting. So it has to be a little forgiveness. We had a quorum there, thank goodness. And so fine. So
Mayor, I move we appoint James Horty, James Little, and William Pearlstein to the Audit Committee for a reappointment of a one-year term.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ed Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Gossett to reappoint Jim Horty, Jim Little, and Bill Pearlstein to the Audit Committee. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. And they are unanimously reappointed. Thank you very much. We'll go on to the next item of business. Bert, you've got a few minutes before you need to be up there.
Okay.
Next item of business is to consider an ordinance to amend Chapter 253-2 of the Municipal Code such that in addition to residents, non-resident property owners may also serve on the City Park and Shade Tree Commission. This, again, is not new to us. We introduced this at the November 7th workshop. The explanatory material indicates that the current tree code that we're looking at indicates you have to be a member, to be a member, you have to be a citizen and resident of the city, and it excluded anybody owning property but living outside the city. The new tree codes that proposed to us includes amending that so that it's you can be a resident or a property owner. This opens it up much. It's apropos at this minute because I've got two applications from members that would like to be members, but they don't qualify for the membership criteria on the current tree code, but they do for the future tree code. I just wanted to address this prior to the next month or two before we actually get to the voting on the tree code. Are there any questions with this? Here's the ordinance. Do you want to summarize the ordinance? It basically...
The ordinance is titled An Ordinance to Amend Chapter 253 Trees of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 2001, Section 253-2, and insert new Section 253-2 relating to the Park and Shade Tree Commission membership eligibility requirements. So if you scroll down through the whereases and get to the be it ordained portion, says it is amended by deleting the current Section 253-2 in its entirety and inserting a new 253-2 as follows. It would say, the City Parks and Shade Tree Commission for the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, shall consist of 5 members who are residents or property owners of the city and who shall be appointed by the mayor with the approval of the city commissioners. The prior version, as the mayor said, did not allow for, only allowed for residents to serve. It also had some language about staggering because it was the first code provision that set up the the commission. So we took that staggering of terms language out because it's already been established and the terms are already staggered. The synopsis of the ordinance is this ordinance amends Chapter 253, trees of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach, such that non-resident property owners are eligible to serve on the Parks and Shade Tree Commission.
Is there any further discussion up here?
I have a question. Is property owner, does that also include just commercial property?
Yes.
So you could own commercial property and that's that?
Yes.
Okay.
If there's no questions or comments up here, we'll go to the members of the public.
Can I clarify that?
Yeah.
That has to be commercial property in a individual's name. It cannot be an LLC, can it? A member of an LLC?
That's a good point. It doesn't allow for entity ownership. An entity can't serve essentially, so I think it has to be an individual, right?
Well, how does that apply to the whole thing? We say residents or property owners. Does the same thing apply here? That are we not being clear enough? Or do we need to specify if you're an owner as an LLC or a limited
On other committees, I think we have specifically said business owners can make up, a downtown business owner can be on that committee. We're not saying that here, we're saying just property owners. So unless a commercial property owner owns it in their name outright, I would say that they're not eligible to serve on this committee.
I think you're probably right.
I think the same is true with someone that may own their house in an LLC as well.
Right.
So if you own a business, but the property is owned by someone else, you're saying that in the other commissions we're allowing it, but this would not allow it?
Not only that instance, you're saying if myself and the commissioner own property,
right,
or property, commercial property, but we own it through an LLC, we technically would not be able to serve on the commission based upon this provision. We need to say, you as commissioners would need to say, residents, property owners, or, and I guess, I mean, you'd have to, I think you would need to specifically include language that makes clear that you can own the property through an entity and you'd still be able to serve, but it's not clear as it's written now. So I guess as a policy matter, the commissioners, that's something the commissioners need to.
But is there any stipulation in the difference that this is a commission outlined in the code as opposed to other committees are not mentioned in the code whatsoever? Does that carry any different weight? Just curious.
Yeah, well, the mention of membership in the other committees is by unwritten policy, you know. So it says you can be a business owner or something like that. This, I think, needs to be crisp.
Yeah.
Because this is a commission. So it sounds like we need to withdraw it, put it on the next workshop agenda and clarify.
I mean, if your intention is to limit it to only people that own property in their name, I mean, I guess I'm okay with that. I just wanted to be clear. That's how I interpret it.
Yeah, so if you're going to defer on this and ask us to provide clarity, I guess I would need to know from the commissioners what is, as a policy perspective, do you want to allow for people who own property through an LLC or through a trust or something else to be able to serve on this committee, or is it only if you own it in your individual name?
I mean, are we basically saying that we want the qualifications for, let's say, voting being the same? Because you wouldn't be eligible to vote.
Yeah.
And that's why, and I'm just saying, like, if you're promulgating policy or making decisions on behalf of the city, you kind of, I would tend to think you'd want those to be the same.
And that's what I've been doing for my committee, is what Bunky said. If they can vote, when I'm looking for commercial people all the time for the Boardwalk and Beach Committee.
Yeah, this language would be consistent with who can vote and who could run for elected office.
If it's an LLC, you can't vote.
Right.
So we need to define property. Is that what this is then?
Just qualified voter. perhaps.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest.
That standard exists. We're not rewriting it or reinterpreting it. I'm just, to me, a commission differs than a committee.
Well, let's do this. Let's defer until the December workshop. Give everybody a little time to think about what you want and how to do it. Again, look back at the support document before this so that you can compare the current code language to the proposed. And again, this is what is proposed in the current tree code. That doesn't mean that that would have been adopted necessarily, but I think we do need clarity because this commission has authority, quasi-judicial authority.
Yeah.
But should they be, I think, to Commissioner Sharnowski's point, then should we, and Commissioner will agree, should all the codes or should all the committees and commissions be the same? We should have all the same criteria for being a member, right?
I don't know, but, well, I don't, that's hard to say because Board of Adjustment has different qualifications than the Planning Commission and everything. So let's do a little spreadsheet and compare and see if we want to go that direction. All right, to just save us a little time today. Since we're deferring this, did you want to go ahead and say something or wait? Okay. Identify yourself and your relationship to the city, please.
Walter Birmingham, 123 Henlopen Avenue. I apologize for not having read it, but I listened to what you said. But it doesn't say that you have to have some members. You said or. Does it have to have some people on it that live in the city?
Not the way it's written currently.
I think, I'm not trying to mess with it, but I think at least 2 ought to be city residents. Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else from? If not, then we're going to defer on that.
Mayor, if I could, and this may be perfectly fine, but the way that the Planning Commission says it shall consist of, certain number of members who shall be residents, property owners, registered voters, or person eligible to register to vote within the city of Rehoboth Beach. I mean,
But again, it says property owners. And you pointed out, I think everybody's pointed out that lacks the clarity.
I mean, it doesn't lack clarity for me. I would say that an entity property owner that's not eligible. That's how I was just being clear.
That's how you would interpret it. But that doesn't mean that Tim interprets it that way, or Bunky interprets it that way. Do you mind, we'll defer this
defer.
and get to it, Now we're late for that museum function. I'm blaming it on you there. All righty, so Burton, let's see here. You want to take it over?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Next item of business on the agenda is to consider the recommendation of the Audit Committee to approve the city's independent audit report prepared by the firm Barbacane, Thornton and Company for the fiscal year ended March 31st, 2022. Embedded in the agenda is a memo from the Audit Committee. Just please note that in the from line, Mr. Perlstein's last name is spelled incorrectly. So this is, again, a memo to the mayor and commissioners recommending that the audit be accepted by the mayor and commissioners. And Bert, the city's finance director, is here to answer any questions you might have. Do we need to take a vote on this, Glenn?
Vote to accept it, yes.
Make a motion,
Vice President?
To make a motion to accept the Audit Committee's recommendation for the audit completed by Barbacane, Thornton and Company on the city's financial statements for year ending March 31st, 2022.
Second.
I guess I can.
Yeah.
So, any?
I'll second.
Wait,
We
had a
did
second
already
there.
second. I thought.
All right. Any discussion? Let's call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the resolution passes.
Good job, Bert.
Thanks, Bert.
There you go. Thanks, Bert.
You need to go to the bathroom more often, Mayor.
Good golly, you get a lot done. That's
the
the
last
second
item on
time
the
you
agenda,
did
yeah.
Done,
that.
Stan.
Second time, by golly. Thank you very much. Thank you, Patrick, for emceeing there, chairing. With that, we're going to go to the next item of old business, which is consider adoption of a resolution setting a non-refundable administrative fee of $325 to accompany license agreement applications and setting an annual administrative fee of $30 for license agreements, which may be in addition to an annual use fee. There's a resolution embedded in the agenda. As you can see, do you want to take a look at it? It actually establishes all the fees for license agreement with some flexibility into the third fee.
Right, so there's three categories. So first, there'd be a non-refundable fixed administrative fee of $325 that would accompany all license agreement applications to cover the development of the license agreement. So this is just the initial application fee. It's not refundable, $325. Second would be an annual fixed administrative fee of $30 shall be applied to existing license agreements to cover the management of the license agreement in the out years. So each year, this is a fee that would apply, $30. And then finally, a discretionary annual or single fee, an amount to be determined by the Board of Commissioners based upon the proposed encroachment and any relevant circumstances. So this is that it's discretionary because you never know what exactly is going to come in. For example, when the Presbytery came in, there was a fair amount of research that had to be done to find the old surveys and to figure out what had been done previously, and that certainly took more effort than just a standard one that might come in. So in that instance, maybe the time that the attorneys took researching the land records and stuff, that would be applicable and would be a one-time discretionary fee to tack on. So that's what that third category allows for.
And how I'm interpreting it is that is the compensation for use of city land.
Right.
Right?
Right, certainly. So, I mean, for example, if somebody wanted to encroach in an area that could be a public parking space and you're losing revenue from that parking to allow for that encroachment, then that's a valuable land. If it's in some other part of the city where it doesn't have the same value, maybe there would not be a discretionary fee attached.
And I think that's one of the points I brought up the last time, so I'm glad that's included here. May I make a motion?
Any further? We want to go to the members of the public first. Anybody in the public would like to comment on license agreement fees? I'm not seeing anybody. Go ahead, Dan.
I move, be it resolved by the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach in a session met this 18th day of November 2022, that the city license agreement fees are hereby established as follows. A non-refundable fixed administrative fee of $325 shall accompany all license agreement applications to cover the development of a license agreement. And number two, an annual fixed administrative fee of $30 shall be applied to existing license agreements to cover the management of the license agreement. And number three, a discretionary annual or single fee in the amount to be determined by the Board of Commissioners based upon the proposed encroachment and any relevant circumstances. Further, be it resolved that this resolution shall not place any restrictions or limitations on fees that may be imposed by the city in relation to license agreements. And this resolution shall be effective immediately upon adoption.
That's fine. Do I get a second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Ed Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Patrick Gossett to adopt the resolution before us establishing city license agreement fees. Is there any further discussion up here? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And so the motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Now we have better consistency in that arena. We're going to go on to the next item of old business, which is review city code related to construction, including but not limited to Chapter 105, demolition of buildings, Chapter 109, moving of buildings, and Chapter 102-4, hours of construction. Evan's been working on this. I do want to acknowledge that Carolyn Diefendorfer, we got your email specific to hours of constructions. specific to Saturdays, and that is embedded in the agenda. So thank you for that comment. We'll come back to the public after the commissioners have the first talk, but right now, Evan, if you could update us.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. This is now version 3 of the proposed amendments to Chapter 105, demolition of buildings, Chapter 109, moving of buildings, and Chapter 102, building construction. I'll just recap with some of the changes that were made from the previous version. So starting off with the definitions, in the commercial demolition definition, we have added the applicable zoning districts. So you'll see in there that we have the central commercial district, the commercial amusement district, the secondary commercial district, and also for this draft, we have added the educational residential district, the cemetery district, and the open space district. Certainly that is up for discussion amongst the commissioners if you wish to move those zoning districts to the residential demolition section of the code. Additionally, another change that we had made was to try and address the horizontal component of an exterior wall. So with that being said, we have pulled out portion of exterior wall and included a reference to a spanning a proportionate horizontal distance of 1 complete story. So we have done that for the exterior wall. We have also added a definition of a roof deck to encompass the roof that would be over top of the structure or building. Similarly, we've addressed the requirements of what would require a demolition permit for said roof deck, as well as the portion of any roof deck. We have added a definition of neglect. We checked the International Building Code, Residential Code. They did not define neglect, and the Property Maintenance Code was pretty generic or broad in terms of their definition of neglect. So I was able to do some research on demolition by neglect in other municipalities and insert that definition of neglect for your consideration. We have also, down to Chapter 109, proposed amendments, line 131, we have added the moving of any building or structure to replace the reference to house moving. We have also amended the emergency situation section to include the written finding stating the reasons why the public health and safety require a more expeditious move, which is similarly stated in the demolition section. Finally, we have added the holidays from the city holiday list that were requested at the last meeting, and that is the summary of the proposed amendments, and we can answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Evan. As you note, they've added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days to the days of weekdays, holidays where you can't work. You've left all the Saturdays alone. And is there any discussion about amending? Start off there, I guess. Again, lines 141 to 147. Is there any interest in retaining those, changing them?
Mayor, this is my suggestion, and again, trying to contain consistency within the code. We define workdays, non-work days differently of holidays that our staff members are not present and work is being done. Currently, I know also that occurs on Saturday, but we may be able to address that in upcoming budget discussions of having coverage on Saturdays for that. But I just think for consistency and oversight of work going on in the city, that this was an important change to make.
I just want to make sure we're all mindful that the city, to be a good citizen, would have to adhere to these also. And so, you know, it's not necessarily saying an extra 6 days that our construction workers can't do work, but there are certainly some of these days in there where we would have to restrict their ability to do work, and which can be particularly challenging in the off season when we've only got a limited number of days only. So just FYI, are there any further discussion of this?
I know we discussed this in the workshop, but what is the overall objective by adding more days not to work? If the business is open, the entity's open,
My comment on this was just, we have no staff coverage for review of what's going on. If there's construction going on in the city, it would fall back to if there's a challenge or somebody doesn't like because there's noise or something of that nature, it goes back to the police department. The police department certainly is not consistent or aware that much of the building codes. That's my reason for bringing this forward.
But that's troublesome a little bit because we're saying we're adding days when we're realizing we don't have enforcement on there to go and keep an eye on it anyhow. So, you know, and at the last meeting, if I recall correctly, Commissioner Sharp indicated she had one or more constituents come to her complaining. I have never had a complaint about noise and in terms of construction noise, other than starting too early in the morning and going too late at night. So I'm struggling with this a little bit. I recognize maybe, I don't recognize the need is as great perhaps as you do, Commissioner Gossett. And so again, I'm not sure.
Comment from building and license.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that you're adding these days in, but you're failing to recognize that some of these holidays fall on weekends. And so some of the observation days are scheduled such that city staff is not in as well. I don't see any recognition of that.
They're all Monday holidays.
Well, no, I don't know that that's valid. Let me look at some dates real quick. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, federal holiday, falls on the third Monday of January. What do you have next? President's Day, federal holiday observed on Monday, February 20th in 2023. Good Friday.
Friday.
I don't have that one.
Usually.
Down. I don't
Usually
know.
Friday. One example would be this year's Christmas and New Year's holidays.
Friday. There you go.
They fall.
Juneteenth is federal holiday. It's on a Monday, June 19th. Columbus Day, federal holiday, Monday, October 9th, 2023. General election is on a Tuesday. Return Day is on a Thursday. Veterans Day
changes.
Is a federal holiday, falls on November 11th annually, although the day of the week the holiday observed fluctuates. It's kind of one of those funny holidays. Veterans Day, Thanksgiving Day is always a Thursday, and of course the Friday following Thanksgiving Day is always a Friday. So
the example I think Matt's talking about is New Year's Day this year and Christmas Day or New Year's Day. Yeah.
Right.
So we've got two holidays upcoming. Christmas is on a Saturday. New Year's Day is on Sunday. New Year's Day is on a Sunday as well. So the holiday would fall to a Monday.
But
yeah,
we
but
observe.
I think you've got to. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
Just a point of discussion.
I don't think we take them out. We just recognize some years are going to fall on weekends, and naturally there's not going to be any construction opportunity, whereas other times it may fluctuate. Yeah, okay.
Just to be clear, some of these dates were referenced, election day and return day. That is not included in this ordinance, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. To Commissioner Bennett's point, I don't understand the point of adding more restriction to days. If people want to work, let's let them work. I mean, we could nitpick everything, and we don't have staff working on Saturdays. Yeah, we might, in the new budget season, have someone doing that, but we also don't have someone working every single night when businesses are open. I don't see why we're putting more restrictions on our residents and the contractors that they employ.
If we could go back to the public, you're nodding your head, Carolyn. I know your letter focused on Saturdays. Do you want to? I'm offering you the opportunity to explain those nods. Yeah.
Carolyn Diefendorfer, city resident. I agree with Edward. I agree with, when, Commissioner Sharp's, the residents who complained were the ones that were there. The people who own the property may be getting, maybe building a home to become a resident. We're getting ready to have our next door neighbors and house behind and one over from us worked on. Am I going to like the noise on a Saturday or on a holiday? No, but I want those projects done as quickly as possible. So I don't think restricting, the work that can be done for a property owner anymore is beneficial to anybody. You delay when maybe a new resident can move into their home. You delay when, if it's going to be a rental, when that rental can start, and then the city can start collecting revenue from those rentals. You're just we're worried about the few people who complain about it. I agree, starting too early, going too late is probably the bigger issue. It's not, the Saturday in the off season. It's not these other holidays that are not common. Everybody doesn't get those holidays off. So I just don't think we should further restrict work that can be done for a property owner. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else from the public? Nope. Back up to this table, how do we want to pursue this? We could certainly, we could choose to take it out and present a final ordinance, and then it could be voted on as an amendment, or we can leave it in and then it's possibly voted down and then modified by removing that language. What's the pleasure of the commissioners?
I'm just looking at this in terms of there obviously if city, I'm just trying to zero in on what the concerns are, and certainly if city staff is not available on certain days, holidays or whatever, there are certain activities that aren't going to take place. They're not going to be doing inspections. They're not going to be signing off on things and so forth and so on. But I do feel like, and maybe there are certain holidays that for whatever reason we want to just say as a city, we just don't allow activities to take place on those days. And I'm not saying they're any more sacred or less sacred, but I don't know if people want things happening on Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. But I'm seeing this as being borderline restrictive, as what Carolyn's saying, and that obviously if there's certain aspects that the contractor expects the city to be there, well, they're not going to be there, so there's not going to be certain activities going to take place. And I guess the other thing is with regard to if there are complaints and everything, I think people should be able to register a complaint, and let's say if building and licensing isn't there, that the city would duly note it, and then they could come back and possibly resolve it, for a future, if there was a future occurrence of it or something like that. But I'm seeing this being a little bit restrictive. So.
Well, and my suggestion would be, based on what may be a majority here today, just to remove the newly inserted dates. And certainly, again, when it comes time to vote on this, if somebody wanted to make an amendment to try to add them back in, then that would be doable too. Okay. Again, I'm kind of leaning against it for right now. Any further comment up here? Commissioner Legree.
So you're saying that 102-4, the amendment that's on line 1, starts on line 140, to hold that valid as written?
No, he's saying the opposite.
You're saying to not do that?
In lines 144 to 146, you would remove the additional holiday restrictions that are on that document.
Yeah, but are we also removing state of Delaware?
No, that should stay.
And 142, we're leaving Saturdays.
So in other words, we're just leaving it static. We're not making any changes to 102.
If that's so restrictive, why don't we take them all out?
Because I think we agree, Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Day, the very busy Labor Day and Memorial Day.
Days
I
people
think
have
those are
off.
valid.
Contractors aren't giving off a lot of these holidays. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, I think. I mean, to start going down the list, I mean, we were joking, you know, we're going to put out Festivus in here.
Leave it as
I mean,
stated.
So we'll take it out and somebody can make amendment to put it back in if possible.
Other questions on it, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, to you now.
So,
We're
just
entertaining
curious.
questions on the whole thing.
We don't have a definition of demolition in this code, do we? So we're talking about demolition, but we don't define it. The only place I find demolition defined in the code is in the tree code. So we talk about all of this, but there's no kind of go back to what is definition of demolition.
I thought we did.
No, we, initially we did, and then we ended up breaking out into better defining commercial demolition versus residential demolition.
Well,
Because
splitting it out that way, but we still don't talk about demolition. So I don't know if it's building and license are okay with that, or?
Well, building, I'm sorry, let's answer that. Building and licensing reviewed this with you, so they are fully aware of what's proposed in here and in agreement. Is that true? Okay.
Yeah, and I think we apply demolition differently in the residential and commercial areas, so that's why we've.
So it's defined, it's just defined differently for the two categories. And both of those are in here.
That was just in season.
You actually might revise the definitions to be demolition, comma, commercial, and demolition, comma, residential, so they appear side by side. Yeah.
Sure. Another comment is, in many of our documents in the code, we refer to instead of the written out name, if you will, commercial district, whatever, we do C1, C2, C3, et cetera. So to clarify that better, should we just add those in? Because like on the.
Can you give me a line number, maybe?
Sure. 19 through 23, just like when we say commercial district, central commercial district, paren C1, commercial amusement district C2, secondary commission, et cetera, just lay it out so that it matches the zoning map.
That's fine.
And then also, for instance, like on the, where do I have it here? On the site requirements for zoning district, it's just laid out as just clarifications.
Yep.
Make it more clear.
Sure, we can do that.
Any members of the public want to talk on demolition? Broadly? Nope. All right. Any further comment up here on questions on anything?
Yeah, I just had a question on, just for consistency, again, in language. We talk about under demolition, where are we here?
Give me a line number again.
As soon as I find it, I'll be happy to share it. Jumping down to lines 63, 62, 63, demolition prohibited during certain periods. We talk about that on lines 105 to 109. We use the phrase "n of any building or structure." We use that in moving, but we don't use that in demolition. So is that okay?
What are your other lines there?
105 to 109. Under.
So I mean, I think unless there's a reason that building licensing or the city manager would object, I think you could add in to say May 15 through September 15 of each and every year, the commercial and residential demolition of any building or structure, leave it of any building or structure there shall be prohibited by any person. Was there a reason that you didn't want to use building or structure? Is there some other category that you're?
I'm Corey Shinko, Assistant Building Inspector. No, that's the short answer, no. That should be in there. And that pulls back to the original definition of any building or structure. We have that in, I believe, in the building move. It gives a certain minimum width, and that includes structure. And I think Evan brought up in a previous meeting that the definition of structure, of building, is a structure that is usually roofed with 4 walls. And we took out the word usually so that there'd be no vagueness on the difference between a building and a structure. But the structure itself is anything with a permanent placement on the ground or that has an attachment to something that has a permanent placement on the ground. So we wanted to keep the same definition for moving of buildings or demolition.
So that just would make it consistent, that's all.
I think too, then we might need to add building to line 69, the permit for demolition of any building or structure.
Yep, I think you're right.
Okay.
That's not really increasing, we'd still take a vote on it, couldn't we? Or-
No, you can, yes. And this isn't a zoning amendment, so there's no public hearing.
Anything else, Patrick?
I think that's it.
Anything else, anybody? Well, we'll make those changes. This is a regular meeting. We have December 5th workshop meeting. We'll put this on again for one last look before we, if favored, then we'll put it on for consideration of a vote at our December regular meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you all, Building and Licensing, and Evan, for your work on that. We appreciate it. With that, we're going to go to the next item of old business, which is F, discuss an ordinance to amend Chapter 215 Restaurants by amending Sections 215.1 and other various sections, and inserting a new Article 5 relating to establishing regulations for outdoor dining on public space, and a licensing procedure for outdoor dining on public space, to include discussion of and possible amendments to the current design manual for outdoor dining on public space, which was formerly identified as a policy, and also includes possible additional amendments to existing Chapter 215 restaurants. I think we have 2 support documents here, one specific to amending Chapter 215, which includes bringing the design manual components into the code to codify it. And then the second support document is draft changes to the outdoor design manual. Evan, you've been working diligently on this. I'll turn it over to you for...
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So I know the last time we spoke, we talked about really the first draft of the outdoor dining ordinance was to insert everything that had previously existed in the outdoor dining policy into the code. We have since changed the name of the policy to design manual and tried to capture within that design manual really the requirements of establishing an outdoor dining area on public space, mainly being minimum, maximum widths, dimensions, things like that. That design manual, you'll recall, also has illustrations and other instructions in there, which we thought was probably better left outside of the code. So actually within I guess we can start with the ordinance itself. Within the ordinance itself are the proposed amendments, and there's some further comments included off to the side, the right-hand side, that are for your consideration today. We can either take them one by one, or...
I think we need to, Evan. I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on it. For instance, buffer. We've added a definition of buffer. That's taken directly from the design manual, I believe. So one of the important things I think to note is that when you look at the red line of the design manual, you're going to see a lot of red strikeouts, things that are removed. Evans assured me that anything that's removed for the design manual is because it was transferred over to the code, and we didn't want this redundancy there. So it's not like we're making any major changes. Now, there are maybe a few things in there that we indeed are making a major changes are, but they're going to be highlighted so that we understand what the possible changes are.
Yeah, and just
So-
to clarify on that real quick, Mayor, too, the design manual, again, there are a lot of red strikeouts. Now, we found that the policy before it was the design manual was redundant itself. So the strikeouts were to remove the redundancy from the design manual, but also any redundancy between the design manual and the ordinance.
So we've got a buffer, outdoor dining area depth. Again, these are all definitions added to Chapter 215 that were taken from the design manual. If you remember, the design manual, or formerly called the policy, illustrated the code.
Correct.
And so that's brought over. Public space, if I go too quick, everybody speak up. Public space definition, sidewalk depth, separation barrier. Now, the separation barrier was enhanced quite a bit, right?
It was.
So we had a definition of separate barrier. We had a definition within 270-19, separation barrier. The design manual had a little different. And so now we're trying to combine them all somewhat in there. So you'll notice that this is not just brought over, but it's expanded a little bit. The service aisle definition changed essentially because we decided to propose allowing different setups where the service aisle currently in the design manual requires it be farthest from the building facade and up against the barrier. And you can see when we get to the illustration in the very back that the service aisle can also be up against the front facade. So that's why that has a change of definition there. Is this line 128 is brought over from the design manual? This is brought over from the design manual?
Yeah, that was really just to show that now outdoor dining on public space, rather than just simply granting a license, requires a supplemental permit of compliance.
Okay. This is brought over, I believe, from the design manual.
That is the requirement that if they are applying for a supplemental permit of compliance, that they have to first complete the license application, which would go through building and licensing. That ensures compliance with the design manual prior to it coming to be before you.
I feel like I'm missing stuff. No? Here's a section here. Evan, you want to explain?
Sure. So you'll recall we had a legal and editorial analysis done on the city code. This was one of the questions that was posed from that code review process. It's a very broad question, but it just simply states, is any revision desired? And they are referencing the $500 appeal processing fee for the revocation or suspension of a permit of compliance. And simply, if there's no revision desired, then we would just strike that comment.
And leave it at 500.
Correct.
So the question is there a desire? I think that has to be looked at in conjunction with any other fees or something. I mean, I've started lately to question the $1,000 fee on the permit of compliance, for instance. You know, when was that last change? And we certainly invest a lot with our city solicitor and the permanent compliance. So I don't know whether, is there an appetite to review and see if we want to increase the fee here and any other fees within the purview of the restaurants?
Sure, and let me just touch on that briefly, Mayor. So there are actually 3 comments from the company that did the legal and editorial analysis of the code. They all address fees. So the first is referencing the $500 appeal processing fee we've talked about. The second was the $1,000 permit of compliance, supplemental permit of compliance fee. The question just states that the section establishes the fee for a permanent compliance and/or supplemental permanent compliance is any revision desired. So that is referencing the $1,000. Also, the third question that was posed asked about violations. Right now, we have a violation section that says anybody who violates any provision of this chapter shall be fined not less than $100 nor more than $200 for each offense. The discussion we had internally amongst the staff during this review process was looking at the maximum $200 fine and just increasing that to $500. Again, $500 is just the maximum allowable in the code. That doesn't mean we would go out and fine everybody $500. That $500 actually comes from the charter. There's a provision in the charter which allows for the punishment of any violation or ordinance not to exceed $500. So from going from $200 to $500, that gives greater flexibility over time. But again, we would not go out and start fining everybody $500. That is just allowing us to fine somebody anywhere within the range of $100 to $500 as opposed to $100 to $200.
So are those are listed in bubbles further down, correct?
Yes, they are.
So we'll be coming back to all those.
If I could ask
Yeah.
a question, so this appealing of revocation or suspension of the permit of compliance would be, I guess, let me use the example that there is a restaurant that has a permit of compliance with a supplemental permit of compliance for outdoor dining on private space, plus they've got, they're using some public space on the sidewalk. So I would kind of look at that as three different areas
Right.
of that.
Right.
If there was a violation in any one of those areas, you may revoke their permit of compliance. And so it wouldn't be three different suspensions, right? It would all be one.
Right, and actually the first sentence of that section says any permit of compliance or supplemental permit of compliance.
Okay.
So I take that to believe that if there is a violation that's found, for example, the supplemental permit of compliance could be suspended. I guess my question for Glenn would be that is the permit of compliance required to be suspended if the supplemental permit of compliance is? I don't know if they are.
I don't think so. I think you could distinguish. Mm-hmm.
Right. So if there's a violation outside, you can say, hey, you can't use that supplemental dining patio anymore, but you can still.
Right. Does not shut down your main interior restaurant.
Well, and I think that was intentful, actually,
yeah.
wasn't it?
That's why we
Yeah,
separated it.
yeah. We segregated them so you didn't shut down the entirety of a restaurant.
I think until we look at the fee structures overall, I wouldn't make any specific changes at this
Okay,
point.
so let's make note that the question is there and unyielded.
Okay. I agree with Chernowski.
The lines 30, 36, 37, there was an appeal of not more than 30 days. I just questioned that because later down in there, if you recall, there's a place that allows for 45 days. And one of those consistency things. I guess I didn't note it.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
you have the section.
Well, I'm at line 336, so.
Okay. Yeah,
Over
so
that.
the section that the mayor's referencing is, it starts on line 378. Should the city manager deny a request to modify a floor plan, the applicant may appeal his decision to the commissioners of Rehoboth Beach, who shall schedule a hearing on said appeal within 45 days. So the window is different between the two, 30 days versus 45 days.
I would keep them consistent.
Consistency at all. There's also, and I don't know whether this would match or not, but there is application or filing dates in for partitionings or minor subdivisions, major subdivisions. We talk about consistency and all, but you've got to file certain levels. Is there any correlation that we should look at there or not?
Well, are the, before you answer, is there a difference in who they are appealable to? Because this one's appealable to the Board of Commissioners.
Correct.
Right? Some of the planning things are
Planning Commission.
appealable to the
Right.
Board of Commissioners, right? Board of Adjustments appealable to the courts.
Again,
So
for consistency, I don't know if it's worthwhile or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure that, I don't know which appeal sections I would look to within the code to find that consistency, because you're right, they are kind of all around. But I would say that, 30 days is pretty quick to get this board assembled, get the materials in your hands, get you ready for an appeal. I mean, I would lean toward making them both 45 days if it were me.
I think I'm probably fine with that. I would also could lean toward expediting it. We don't always need 7 commissioners there. It's ideal, but it'd be nice to resolve things.
Especially when it's related to somebody's livelihood or business.
Yeah.
Well, it's not more than, so I mean, it doesn't limit us. You can hold a
Within-
special meeting or 7-day agenda. posted.
Within, okay. So back to launch.
336, is that?
My computer does its own thing. So consider changing that to 45 days. I'm gonna scroll.
I like the lesser amount.
You like the 30 days?
Yeah, I mean, all we need is 7 days to post, to make notice. I don't know why we would need more than a month to do that, especially as the city solicitor said, it affects someone's livelihood.
But again, as was previously stated, that's a maximum.
Yeah.
We can go quicker. That's all up to the mayor who sets the agenda. I would tend to go quicker. The challenge, though, in going quicker, to share with you, is you poll the commissioners and who can be available when. And at 45 days, you can get all 7. But at 30 days, you can only get 4 or 5. Do you cut them out, or you got to make those decisions? That's why the mayor makes the big bucks, I guess. So, are we okay with 45? Hearing no further objection, let's just keep it that. Modification of floor plan, Patrick, I think you had some
Yeah, just the lines.
notes in here as
362 to 366 about revisions to a floor plan, new permanent compliance, except that a floor plan may be substantially modified without a hearing with the approval of the city manager if the city manager determines that the change plans does not violate the provision of this chapter and does not result in an increase of the bar area. One of the things that I hear from folks is consistency and transparency. So we are responsible for the permanent compliance the first time, but if a substantially modified comes through, the rests with one person, the city manager. And I just, I don't know if that's, we've had some issues before of, how did that happen, or et cetera. So I think to make it consistent, if it's a permanent compliance, for a revision of permanent compliance, it should come back to the mayor and commissioners.
Well, one of the reasons for conducting a permanent compliance is to conduct a public hearing and have the public have the opportunity to speak and witness and testify. And so I think I'm agreeing with you in that, especially when it talks about maybe substantially modified. That kind of horrifies me that
we don't define that. So.
No, and can it indeed be substantially modified without that public hearing? I tend to say no.
And I'm convinced that got changed some time ago erroneously. I know that it used to say cannot be substantially modified without a hearing. And there was maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, there was an amendment to this section. And I remember reading it sometime later going, is that what, because it doesn't seem like you should go to substantially modified.
Let me ask a question. So what if, in the off season, times are slow, someone comes to a business or a restaurant and says, hey, we want to have a wedding reception. Obviously, they would need to change their floor plan to accommodate a wedding reception. Is that not something that is allowed? A one evening modification?
No. Although according to this, I suppose you could go to the city manager and say.
I thought that was the whole purpose of it.
But it's not been interpreted that way. Correct, from building and licensing? It's not clear as to what a, substantial modification. It doesn't say one day or one event.
Thank you, Commissioner. One person's substantial could be paint. The next person's substantial could be a completely interior redo. To your question, no, it would not be permitted. And once we get a solidified floor plan with the table layout, that's exactly what we're expecting to see, no matter what the occasion.
So there was no mechanism for a one-day event, wedding, anything? No.
That is correct.
No, and I think that could be dangerous because one day leads into 2 days, and we say, hey, that's successful. Let's do it 5 days a week. And that, the same topic. It's why I often mention dance floors. If they have a dance floor, I remind them that they can't change the tables to modify and create a dance floor or whatever.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, I believe that's exactly why that's in there, is because of you've had some problems in the past with tables moving from dance floors and then being reapplied during business hours, moving during off hours.
We certainly don't want to have any fun in Rehoboth.
But we're now upscale.
Look, I take this very seriously, and I'm actually offended by that because you've got restaurants that are intentionally violating our code, and they make hell for the others, and they're the reason that a lot of the others have the extra restrictions put on them.
Yep.
So, Patrick, I think you have a second comment there, because I want to add on to it after you do, please.
But just if we remove that section there, the second comment there is the final sentence there, 366, 368, says the building inspector shall inspect all restaurants or dinner theaters at least annually to ensure compliance with this chapter. And I know it's in the code. There's a lot of things in the code that we don't do, but at current staffing levels, I don't feel as if we're capable of doing that, and we keep in a positive way increasing the number of restaurants in town. But and maybe I don't want to put the building inspector on the spot, but if we're not capable of doing that, which I feel it's important to do to keep things in line, whether we highlight it or take it out or just if we're not doing it, I think it's an important thing to do.
Before you answer, I'm going to get you off the hook.
Okay.
I value this greatly.
I do too.
And in my 24 years here, I'll bet we haven't inspected on an annual basis more than 5 times. I don't know. And it has nothing to do with the caliber of building and licensing. It has to do with our labor force and whether we're able to do it. I'm willing in the next upcoming budget to address the enforcement. I want to keep it in there. In fact, I not only want to keep it in there, I want it on its own line. That's the last bubble there. I want to separate this from where it is now so you can actually find it. Because I tell you, this is probably the biggest question over the years is where can I find the annual inspection? And unless you have it memorized, you don't know to go modification of floor plan is where it says there'll be an annual inspection. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but I would like to emphasize it, pull it out, put it in its own section, and then request that it be adhered to. But that's their biggest thing. Restaurants wanting to change floor plans for different reasons.
Are we being realistic though in that if the floor plan is as submitted, and to Commissioner Shanowski's point, there was a wedding or a birthday and you just wanted to push the tables aside, we're saying you can't do that? I mean, that's not realistic.
I mean, also, if there's a four-top and there's a fifth person, you move a chair over, that's not allowed either. I mean, I agree, that's not realistic.
Again, a lot of it's based on abuse by other restaurants. So it's unfortunate, but. So let's keep that in mind, Commissioner Bennett and Chernowski, that if we want to come back to that at some point, then come up with some proposals, if you would, please. Do you have?
No, I guess my only thought there would be, I mean, back to Commissioner Gossett's point about substantially modified, would we then possibly define substantially modified so that we exclude things like, I don't know whether there's any desire to exclude things like chairs being pulled up to tables or temporary
Come in with a stroller.
relocation.
You know, I've seen people go into restaurants with a stroller and they've got to move the table, or if they have to move the chairs. I mean, come on.
So I think the idea is, I mean, maybe we could define substantially modified to exclude situations like that, but include situations which would modify the entire floor plan or half the floor plan, whatever it might be, for a certain prescribed period of time. Just an idea.
I think that language used to read that minor modifications could be approved by the city manager so long as it does not violate the provisions of this chapter and does not result.
But let's be realistic about this. The restaurant is not coming to the city manager to say, we got a stroller here, and we got to make a 5-top out of a 4-top. These are larger things than this. It's, you know, it's get realistic of how it's applied and what really happens. I think this is an annual review of what you have applied that is connected to your permanent compliance.
And Commissioner, if I may, I believe the addition of additional seats is probably the more offensive occurrence, as we've seen in support of the mayor here. As we've seen in our outdoor dining scenarios, like we saw the encroachment continuing and continuing and continuing, and maybe an additional seat got put out there for the outdoor dining. So we do have that occasion, and I believe it's there for the number of seats, and you can rearrange theoretically and still have that same number of seats in there. But when you start to add, I think that's where the problem comes into play.
Well, and in adding seats, and also the original floor plan's been approved by the fire marshal and by the health department, and so if you make a major change, theoretically you should go back to that. It's life safety, it's exits, it's fire suppression, it's number of bathrooms, it's all that stuff that falls in the little, oh yeah, by the way kind of thing. But, you know, it's not moving a 4-top to a 5-top or bringing in a wheelchair or bringing in a baby carriage. These are major modifications to a thing, which, and again, I don't think it fair to leave that to the city manager to make that discussion, because we talked about consistency and transparency and fairness, and, you know, enforcement, we're all getting slapped with we're not enforcing things. So again, this is just another way to get around things, if you will.
I totally understand what you're saying, and I agree with it, but what I think as I interpret this, if I did bring a wheelchair in or I did bring in a stroller, I'm going to be in errors in here. That's all I'm saying. I agree with the spirit of it, but I think that it's the way it's written is very restrictive.
Well, I think it needs to be restrictive, to be honest with you. That's how it's interpreted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty soon you have a chair at the end of every table, and they're sticking out in the aisle, and I hear what the mayor's saying, and I agree.
So I guess is the direction then to define substantially modified, and any substantial modification comes before the Board of Commissioners.
Mm-hmm. Well, modification would be permanent, right?
Potentially.
So then it would be,
We could address that
it would be in violation. So I think that's what the spirit of this was, right? You modified something and then you haven't changed it back.
And as Matt said, they didn't want to change it back.
Right.
Remember, there is language somewhere in here that says moving of tables is it relative to dance floors or something? Moving tables is not, not allowed. So maybe we can find that as we scroll down through
Might be in the
here.
permanent compliance,
Yeah, yeah.
much like demolition in the tree code.
Was that about all the codes need to be rewritten?
Decades.
You have some direction there?
Yes.
In Glenn too? Okay. So we'll go to line 370, 371. This is a new, Evan will have to explain this also. Is this from the design manual? Line 370, 371.
Yeah, let me just pull it up. 370, 371. Let's see here. Yes, so there we at least define modification. So here we included that we added that it includes an area dedicated to outdoor dining on public space. The mayor, there's a comment there from you about interior walls, and that if we are expanding modification to outside of the establishment, the walls of the establishment, whether the interior walls needs to be expanded to include areas dedicated to patio dining or outdoor dining on public space. So we can amend that.
I'm not commenting because I agree with it, so. So I don't know if anybody else has a comment to it. My comment even AM7. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Lines 378, 379, 80, 81. Patrick,
That reflects back to an appeal process from the modification. So if we take the modification out by the city manager, that should also be struck.
but if we have to wait to see what he comes
Right.
up with, obviously, yeah, okay. 390 to 393, Evan, you explained the E-code.
Right, so that again is the violation section, which lays out that any violation of any provision of that chapter, they may be fined not less than $100 nor more than $200. The charter allows for up to $500, so just to give greater discretion, especially over time, so that we don't come back and amend this over the years, just to allow the flexibility to go to $500. Again, that's not saying that we would go out and the first offense would be $500. That just gives us the discretion to violate somebody with a fine anywhere between $100 and $500.
So would you suggest line 391 just saying, strike the words less than 100 nor, and then change the 200 to 500?
Correct. So, well, I would keep in the not
up
less
to.
than 100 nor more than 500 as opposed to 200. So just replacing the 200 with 500.
That's a big range. Is there any philosophy there with a shorter range, 300 to 500, versus a longer range, 100 to 500?
Who's
Wait,
ultimately
wait.
making,
No, not that I'm aware of, Mayor. Nothing comes to mind.
Commissioner?
who's ultimately making that decision? The code enforcement officer?
Right. And I think in certain cases, I'd have to look at this section, but I think police officers usually have discretion to give out violations as well. So it really comes down to, I mean, first offense, second offense, how significant is the offense? So just a little bit more discretion. And again, it's just a recommendation, so.
And then you've got the permanent compliance fee down here that you've already talked about, so.
Right.
Do we have an ability at all to, say, to do some homework to see, is there an actual cost for permanent of client staff time and overhead costs and that type of thing?
Sure.
I think Ann might have done something at one point.
Or
Yeah.
just an average across the board or something?
Sure.
Ann and I did some work, some looking into some of our fees.
Okay.
So that data does exist? Great, thank you.
Moving along. 447 just brought over from the design manual. Line 456 brought over from the design manual. This is now introduction of a new Article 5 into Chapter 215. You want to, as soon as you finish, give us a little preview?
Well, it relatively remains unchanged from the last time that you saw it. Again, the Article 5 includes just the whole application process, license application for outdoor dining on public space. Starting at line 503, we reference compliance with the City of Rehoboth Beach Design Manual into line 504, which is kept on file at the Building and Licensing Department and which is incorporated into this code. So we do have the ability to link documents within the code. We've done that for our zoning map. That's now linked in there, as well as our wireless communication facility design manual. That has also been linked into the code as well. So we would do the same thing here. Continuing along to fees, if there's no questions about that section, we included a non-refundable fee of $150, which was discussed the last time, and that would accompany any new application or reapplication. Again, following up on some of the discussion from the previous meeting. And then we also had the non-refundable fee, annual fee of $325. We removed the difference in fee amounts for restaurants serving alcohol versus restaurants not serving alcohol, and also added that fees will not be prorated.
Let me ask you a question on that. So every year, a restaurant, if they're not making any changes to what has already been approved, they don't need to reapply every year, correct?
The last meeting, we mentioned that they would have to reapply every year.
Yeah, I brought that up at the last meeting, and the consensus was that there was an annual application process, and I think I suggested waiving that $150 fee, and I was told that, well, every year we've got to review it, we've got to go out there, we've got to resurvey, and so it's the same amount of work.
But if every year we're doing an inspection on floor plans, I mean, that's no different.
Not doing that, though.
Well, the intention is that we would be.
Right.
Moving forward.
Is there any desire to change this from anybody else other than Ed, possibly? All righty, we'll go on to the next item. You again reiterate the design manual reference, application requirements. Application requirements. When you submit an application for an outdoor dining area, you have to provide them a current issued business license, and B, an approved permit of compliance for indoor fur service. Well, if you're already established, you've already got the permit of compliance, that's there. But let's say you're a brand new entity. For me, it's which comes first, the chicken or the egg type of thing. Because this is saying if you're a brand new restaurant, first you need that city-issued business license. But then secondly, before we consider in analyzing your license agreement application, you have to have an approved permit of compliance. So I just want to make sure that we've thought this through, that to indeed bring them in front of us, charge them $1,000 for a permit of compliance for a supplemental dining patio on public space permit of compliance. They have to first dish out the $1,000 for the regular permit of compliance.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think we should allow them to do it all in one.
Well, I think that if they're applying simultaneously, it is just one fee. But if they have an existing restaurant and then they want to come back and apply for a permit of compliance for outdoor dining or patio or what have you, it's staff time to analyze and what have you. So I believe that, and it's also, if I'm interpreting it, that you have to have an indoor restaurant before you can have an outdoor restaurant. And that's what provides this.
Yeah, but this, for me, is specific to what comes first or second. Because the way I read this is if you do not have a permit of compliance initially, and you want to apply for a permit of compliance for a new restaurant, maybe it's taking over a retail space or something, and at the same time, you want a supplemental dining patio permit for public space, right? Yeah, you should be able to apply for them all at the same time, I believe. But just the wording here says, before you can apply for the outdoor license, you have to already have that permit of compliance. You see what I'm saying? There's something about the language needs to be wordsmithed or something for me.
Right. So you would like to say something like an approved permit of compliance or a pending application for permit of compliance for indoor food service operations. So that's.
Yeah, because I think how it works now is somebody can come in for a permit of compliance and a supplemental permit of compliance at the same time, and they pay the $1,000.
Right, correct.
And so I could imagine that there would be a circumstance where somebody comes in, they're applying for a permit of compliance, supplemental permit of compliance, and supplemental permit of compliance for dining on public space. So all at the same time. So that's a discussion too, because I think how it's written now is it would be $1,000 for all three permits of compliance. And with that, they would also bring in their completed license application for outdoor dining on public space. And that comes before the commissioner, so you hear the permit of compliance as well as the license at the same time.
Now, when you said let's say they apply for three and it's $1,000, that's $1,000 total.
Correct.
Because that's in here already.
Correct.
Right? And I don't disagree with that. Why not do it all in one shot? One set of publishing things in the paper, one set of attorney and building and licensing review, and then one hearing.
But help me through this, Glenn, in the sense of your question, though. It's a matter of timing of the way the permit of compliance are approved. If it's all at the same time, you must approve that restaurant first, right? Because you can't grant, the two depend on the initial one.
Right. Right. You couldn't, for example, have cooking facilities indoors and just an outdoor dining patio to serve on. So you have to have 10 seats?
35.
35?
Correct.
Why was I thinking 10? 35 seats in an interior restaurant, yeah. So right,
Well,
you have to be.
Well, again, I think you need to have that change that you said, or a pending, okay? And I think what would happen is, let's say they have that scenario and they come in front of us. They're taking over a retail store. They're doing three things. They're seeking a restaurant with a permit of compliance. They can sell alcohol inside. They want a supplemental dining permit for public space and or on private space. I think then the onus is on us that the very first thing we need to do is approve the permit of compliance, it seems. Because if we don't approve the permit of compliance, then there's no point of going to step 2 or step 3.
And that's what it says, right?
Right.
Yeah, but I guess I want them to happen simultaneously somehow, not.
Yeah, this section's written more to envision your scenario where somebody's got an existing restaurant and then they want to make an application. So I understand in a perfect world, they'd come in with all the applications and you could do a motion that approves them all contemporaneously in one motion, but you could never approve an outdoor on public space permit without having an indoor permit of compliance.
I think and maybe it's just a matter of the process in the meeting that the permit of compliance, supplemental permit of compliance hearing is first. And then assuming that's granted, that's when the license discussion takes place. Because in every situation for dining on public property, they have to be granted a supplemental permit of compliance before they're granted the license.
And before they're granted the supplemental finding, they have to have the indoor permit of compliance.
But the language that we're looking at, though, exists in Article 5, outdoor dining on public space.
Right.
So that's what we're talking about, right?
Right.
I know it's semantics, but it's just trying to address your question, Mayor. For outdoor dining in this chapter, on public space, you have to have an approved permit of compliance. Now, it happens the same night and maybe, in. Right.
Okay, well, maybe we read it that way. So I'm willing to move on, but if,
I think
let's
what,
just-
what the city solicitor suggested with or pending or or pending works.
Except that you still couldn't grant, this first while the other thing's still pending. You'd have to get the indoor permanent compliance done first or contemporaneously. So, well, Evan and I will think about that and try to get something, but I think, I mean, we certainly know the intent.
All right, we'll move on then. You got a lot of blue here. Evan, do you want to talk us through? Let's see, that's application requirements, a completed outdoor dining application, et cetera, and then here's all the criteria.
Correct. So the only revision really that we made to this section was we removed OABCC from D, where we mentioned city, state, federal agencies, line 550, yes, because we reference it later. Again, that any outdoor dining areas that will include alcohol has to get approval from the Beverage Control Commissioner.
Well, there's a lot of this taken from the design manual.
Correct.
So it's just a transfer
Yep.
over. Indemnification agreements. Maintenance of outdoor dining area, again, I think comes primarily from the design manual.
Right.
Use restrictions comes from the design manual, but also from 27019B.
Correct.
Not every criterion 27019B is listed here, just the ones relevant to outdoor dining patios on public space. License suspension and closure. Do you want
to? That relatively remains unchanged, Mayor. You have a few proposed edits to that section, but again, it just says that the city manager can suspend the outdoor dining for special events, utility work, sidewalk, road repairs, or emergency situations, just to be able to have that discretion.
Well, I think I expressed last year that, last meeting that as far as closure and the license agreement, could be a shorter period, but I'm also amenable to making it year round and leaving it out there. Let the restaurants decide when they want to open and close, and I can probably agree to that, provided we have certain parameters on closures. And that is when the outdoor dining area is closed for the season, the pedestrian access route is maintained clear of snow. Okay, well, that's a question mark. That would be an ideal for me, that if we're giving you some of the sidewalk, I would like you to keep the rest of the sidewalk open. Okay, well, that's a possibility. I'm more adamant about the next two things, that the dining patio is not to be used for storage of materials other than tables and chairs. For me, it's an aesthetics thing, that I can see you leaving the tables and chairs there. In fact, that might even be prudent for the restaurant to do that, because then the rest of the year when maybe you're not even open, people and potential patrons are walking by, they see everything and they go, hey, I'm going to stop back here at some point because they got a nice thing. But the aesthetics are important to me. So if you took your operational items, such as your hostess stand, your menu board and everything, I would not want to see you store them inside the dining area. And then I especially would not want to see you store them inside the dining area with a blue tarp over everything. To me, the aesthetics, again, are very important. I don't know how to couch all that, but the operational items like your hostess stand, your umbrellas and all those, to me, those ought to be stored inside somewhere, not outside, for not just aesthetics, but because of the wind and the inclement weather and potential to be stolen or played with or something like that. So those are my bigger things about leaving the license for year-round, January to December 31st, but having some kind of parameters that when you are closed for the season, that you've got to maintain your outdoor dining area in a certain fashion. So anyhow, I'll throw those in there.
All of that makes sense.
And let me just add there, so I got one yes, so we'll do that. Let me just throw in there, last time I conveyed that somebody had told me, oh, everything, the whole barrier and everything should come down. It'll look like a ghost town. And Carol Everhart, I saw her shaking her head no, she didn't think so, apparently. I kind of think it's funny because the whole town becomes a ghost town, so why kind of constrict it to the restaurants, But this aesthetic thing does appeal to me quite a bit. Any comments on that? Otherwise, we'll go down to the next thing. In enforcement, is that probably from the design manual, you think?
Yep.
Violations, I think all of these are from the design manual?
Right. So Commissioner Gossett had a comment about if there's 3 or more violations received within a 12-month period, whether no license outdoor dining on public space shall be issued for the next license period. So that's one item for consideration. I added another question too, and that's whether or not we want to add a fine to the violations section. Currently, there's not one. I think the only violation is that we ask that they remove the outdoor dining on public space.
I would say removing it or suspending it's big enough penalty right there, probably, rather than dealing with fines. Excuse me. Patrick, do you want to address your?
I just, a feeling there's some skin in the game, if you will, that if you violated 3 times in a row, that there's a further penalty to pay. That's you write a check for $500 many times over.
Right.
But if there's, it's kind of like the Alcohol and Beverage Control Board. If they come in and fine you, there's an option of you losing your liquor license. So you kind of get your stuff in order. And again, this maybe not falls on that level of a liquor license violation, but there's just, you can just keep writing $500 checks for as many violations as you want.
Well, I'm trying to look in here and see where it says how long the suspension is for.
I don't think it
Determined
does.
necessarily by the city manager, line 604, 605. The length of the suspension will be for a duration as determined necessary by the city manager.
604, I see suspension. Okay, up top here, it's not within violations, okay.
And we could probably add that same sentence to the violation section, because I think here it's just addressing emergency situations, so. Right. Or it does say violation, so we can break that out into the violation section.
I wonder if we should be more black and white and leaving it to the city manager's discretion. I don't know. Could be a 3-day suspension and then they violate it again. You give them a 6-day suspension and they violate it again. So where I'm trying to lead is back to Patrick's suggestion. Do we want to do something like that?
And this question, maybe jumping back a little bit on the new report, Evan, that you provided with us at the beginning of the meeting. We didn't really review it, but in there it lists like contact and then violation. So is there a process already in place that there's a tracking method of how many contacts for your, whatever the violation may be?
Right.
So there is, I hate to use the term paper trail or what have you, but this is not just erroneous, bad guy, good guy kind of thing.
Right. Usually, contact is, for example, it's not uncommon for Howard to receive a phone call from somebody saying, hey, can you go take a look at this? So that we generally would consider a contact. Right. And then if it goes as far as a violation and somebody's either cited for it, that's typically when it falls under that category of violation. And we're just starting that program too, so I wanted to mention as part of that, if there's more information you want to see as part of that, please let us know, because we're just going to continue to.
The way I hear you saying, though, somebody could have a violation, but they just get contact and say, fix it, okay? And they fix it, and then a week later, or a day later, or a month later, somebody comes back and says, complains again about the same thing or another violation, and you come back and say, hey, guys, we talked about this once,
Right.
next time there's a violation. So what I said here is after the third violation, so really that may be up to 5 contacts that you've addressed with this business owner. So it's not, it's not immediate. Is that the way
Right.
I interpret it or not?
We typically, and this is, I'm going to use a swear word here, is department policy. We typically operate on like a 3 strikes, you're out scenario. So we don't, unless it's a blatant violation and you're absolutely going against the code, we give you a warning, we get you an opportunity to correct that situation. If we see it again, we'll do a written notice at that point, and at the 3rd time, then we start to issue the fines and other procedures. But each one of those steps is recorded in our files so that we know what level that we're on. And as Evan said, we're working to create a different style of program, a better means of recordation for those occurrences. And as we develop that, we'll bring that forward.
And I think we could probably look at better spelling out what those 3 violations look like. I think we do that in the permanent compliance suspension section by the city manager, where at first you're given a written warning which outlines the violation and you're given X number of days to correct it. But we could probably better spell out those violations, what they look like.
Agreed.
Yeah, I just think that you gotta have some skin in the game from the business license holder. And, again, $500 fine is the cost of doing business kind of thing. But if it means that your business may be halted, then you may comply a little stronger. I just, kind of like DUIs, you just got so many and then
Right.
same type of thing.
I think the more penalty to, let's just say, a restaurateur in this case, the bigger penalty is going to be the revocation of those additional tables that are able to make money throughout a given night versus the $500 fine.
So do you want to kind of expand that somewhat? Okay.
Do we, in anywhere else, whether it's dining patios on private property or just violations within indoor restaurants, do we do anything similar to that? As in 3 strikes, 3 documented strikes, you're out?
I mean, I would compare it somewhat, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, but stop work order.
Right.
That's a one-time deal. If you're in violation, boom, you get a sticker.
And in extreme cases, we can deem the property unfit as well, but that's extreme cases.
I generally don't support having codifying a number of violations and requiring a suspension. I think we should leave it up to the discretion of the city manager. Because we also, what you can't do and is a number is, I guess, articulate the severity of the violations. 3, I moved a chair from one table to another is very different than we had dancers up on a table type violations. Like, I think the severity of violations could be very different, and I'd like to leave that discretion up to the city manager. But that's just my 2 cents.
I think I can be fine at that. I think we all need to be mindful, at least I will, that this is all going to be a test case for next summer, and we're going to have a new city manager critiquing this and offering any potential changes. So does anybody else want to? Anybody else okay with leaving it alone, or do you want to make changes?
Well, it's all new, so again, there's no skin in the game for anybody. So I just you get a stop work order in the first violation, and if that contractor has multiple violations, you question their license or, this. So, I mean, there are parallel situations in the city that we already enforce that way.
So a split the baby approach in light of the severity of the violation would be that the city may elect to not issue the
Yeah.
outdoor for a period of a year. Not a shall, but may elect if it's a severe series of violations.
You okay with that? Okay. Good, thank you, Patrick. Appeals, shall be in writing to the city manager, lines 632 to 634. The written appeal shall include a statement describing the provision of this article alleged to have been misapplied by the city.
Right, no changes there. There was a thought possibly of having appeals come back to the commissioners, because again, the commissioners are granting the license, but we decided at the last meeting to not allow that, and just, again, the denial of the license, I think, really comes from building and licensing when we find out that they do not comply with the design manual. So we just removed that option to appeal to the board.
Just curious that we have existing about revocation or suspension of permit notice, 21510, lines 327, 351, that establishes appeals there. Would it be a parallel to add it here, or because you've got an existing process?
Yeah, I guess the way that I had viewed this section was in the event that somebody files a license application with building and licensing, and building and licensing denies their application and they're not going to move it forward to the Board of Commissioners, if that restaurateur wants to dispute that decision and appeal it, then it would then come to the city manager. We had that circumstance this past summer where we had at least one restaurant that wanted to have outdoor dining. They did not comply with the policy, and so they had appealed it to the city manager in writing. So it's basically following the same process.
In here, the decision is made by the city manager.
Yes, correct. And that's at the building and licensing phase.
Right. But there's no next step if they don't like the decision of the city manager.
Right.
Okay.
See the synopsis, that must be we're at the end.
So, Evan, if I could just ask one clarification. So so this is how it's going to work, whether it's a new restaurant or existing restaurant, they're going to apply for a license. Building and licensing will review that, either grant the license or not, but that is then contingent on a supplemental permit of compliance.
Yeah, so I think the approach we were taking was building and licensing receives the license application. They review that application to ensure that it complies with the design manual.
Right.
And if it does, then that license application would be brought before the commissioners with the supplemental permit of compliance. So the Board of Commissioners ultimately would see the license application and the supplemental permit of compliance.
Initially. But then each year, we will make them pay the license fee and the annual administrative fee. But if there is no significant change to what they had the year before, you would not make them come back before us for the supplemental permit of compliance, correct?
Right, that's how we had sort of pictured it.
Okay.
Yeah. Any further questions on chapter 215 that we just went through? So your next step is you got some minor modifications. You'll do it in red line.
Sure.
Take out anything that we deleted and insert. And so let's do, we need to get through this design manual and we need to get through the CDP. So in other words, we need to get through this agenda today. You know, we're doing our best.
Yep.
The design manual, I'm just going to go through it similarly. There are some minor changes there. Patrick, I think you did some wordsmithing there. Again, separation barrier, trying to coordinate the design manual definition with the Chapter 215 definition. Same thing with service aisle definition. Remember, a lot of this red is removed, not because it's thrown on the floor, but because it's carried over into the Chapter 215 amendments. So we've got a lot removed there. And some of it's there's redundancy, you said. So, but still, it's not disappearing. The design standards for outdoor dining areas on public space continues with some of these information here. This, again, coordinates with what is in Chapter 215 proposal that we just went through. This is just wordsmithing. Ultimately, we condensed the design manual, so that's a very, very good thing, I think. I'm just going to keep scrolling down. This is just wordsmithing here, design manual, wherever it says policy. Here's one change here for separation barrier required. Again, the separation barrier in Chapter 215 and the design manual, the definition is enhanced. But here are some additional criteria. And one of the things we added is that stanchion-style barriers shall not be used. In other words, those 4x4 posts, theatrical or movie theater type stanchions are not allowed. And that includes the rope in between them. But to clarify, we said on line 148, barriers, 146, stanchion-style barriers should not be used. And on 148, barriers shall be solid and continuous, except for allowances for entry and exit to the outdoor dining area. We said continuous before. We wanted to clarify that there can be entrances and exits. And we also wanted to say that the barriers needed to be solid. So that rope, let's say you have a 3-foot planter and a 3-foot space and a 3-foot planter, you still can't have rope in that 3-foot void there. And the whole purpose is to make it more substantial, to make it heavier so that it doesn't get creep that happened a lot to a lot of them over the summer, this past summer. And so that people cannot just step over the ropes and step in and out. The barrier's there for a purpose. So those are the changes. Any questions on those particular changes?
Yeah, Mayor, does the Alcohol Control Commission, do they restrict?
Not to my knowledge. I would have to.
I think they allow. You mean in terms of the type of barrier?
The type of barrier.
They're much more lax than we are. So that's why I think this has to be tightened up quite a bit. And they may also have something about the number of egress and entrances and something. I know they have something about for each egress and exit, there are particular signs that have to be there. But this is more restrictive than what they have. And I think it's validated by our policy in the past and how everything has worked in the past. I thought it's worked very well, except for the stanchion-type barriers, which are allowed apparently by the alcohol commissioner. That did not work. It just did not work.
In what way?
Creep. The stanchions aren't rigid enough. Visitors, patrons, as they walk down the street, put their hand on them and move them over a foot or back a foot or over a foot. The restaurateurs maybe contribute to that too and give them bigger. So they've got to be, in my opinion, they need to be substantial enough barriers. We got some beautiful examples out there this year.
Absolutely.
So,
but this policy would only be on public space. So I'm thinking of one establishment that has those rope barriers, but I believe it is all on private property. This would or would not apply to them.
This design manual is
It's
for
public
outdoor
space.
dining on public space. Now, remember, the dining patios on the restaurant premises have to meet the barriers defined in 270-19. So 42 inches high minimum and et cetera. But that is not as restrictive as what these are. And I think there's a need, again, I think there's a valid reason and a need to have more restrictions on them because we're allowing these dining areas to extend into public space.
Yeah, I understood. Thank you.
Anything else here? Go to table and chair placement. Patrick, I think this might have been in one of your original
Well, it was, yeah, just to add
things.
more flexibility so that people can place the tables either, originally it was just against the facade.
157.
But we've seen that over the summer, people move them against the barriers. So this just provides more flexibility for the license holder to do placement of the tables kind of not wherever they want,
Right.
but a little more
So
flexibility.
I'm going to go back to the wording there in a minute.
Okay.
But what I did is I went forward to our illustrations because this is also a modification. We had this illustration before. Yeah, we had this illustration before in the previous one. The two-top table parallel to the front facade, your 3-foot service aisle, your 1-foot barrier means you have to have a minimum of 6-foot area there. But what we're talking about is there was actually one that did this out there and seemed to be fine. And so we're saying here's another opportunity, not just the service aisle here and the table against the facade, but putting the table against the barrier and having your service aisle against the property line. And then we did the same illustration reconfiguration here for 4-top table, and same thing here with the 4-top table against the barrier and the service aisle here. It all acts the same. And so back to lines 150, back to the lines here, only 2 or 4-top tables placed so that they're longer dimension parallel to either the facade or the separation barrier. So this language just is changed to reflect those illustrations that have been changed. This is changed to reflect the 3-foot minimum service aisle definition. That
was relocated.
It's already in here. It's just in a different position. There's a minor wordsmithing there. It's all self-explanatory. Again, here's some changes. A lot of these in here are reworded, combined, and just inserted below. This, I guess, was in the original operational items like hosted stands, menus, benches. Oh, yeah, I guess benches outside of the designated outdoor dining area or anywhere else. Oh, this is no operational items can be placed outside of the designated dining area. And I suggested my little bubble that allowing the menu stands or other operational items placed outside the separation barriers is fine. We had places do that this summer. But you still have to have a restriction that those items cannot be located within the pedestrian access route or any areas beyond the route, such as in the buffer. So I think that exception reflects what at least one restaurant did this summer and didn't seem to be anything bad. Not hearing any objections to sign manual outdoor. This area here would be changed to reflect Chapter 215 when you're closed for the season. What does that mean? This reflects what we already talked about in Chapter 215 amendments. Violations, wordsmithing. More wordsmithing. Here's a change here. It's just an omission of the earlier one for the areas where, and the minimum PAR. So I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Back to the four top table configurations re-illustrated. These are all the same. Any questions that we can follow up or close out the design manual? So that would be, again, refined, Evan, and brought forward to our next meeting, which is the December 5th workshop meeting. Anything else to add on that?
Is it fair to accept the deletions for the next version?
I think so.
Thank you.
It makes it less complicated. So, and we've also got this version already in hand if we needed to reference it or something. Can I just, how can I accelerate this proclamation? I mean, I can read it, but.
It doesn't need to be read in, but if you'd like it read in.
Well, here, you read it.
I've got it here.
Took a lot of work.
Proclamation Small
You
Business
got it.
Saturday. Whereas the City of Rehoboth Beach celebrates our approximately 350 local small businesses with storefronts in downtown Rehoboth and the significant contributions that they make to our local economy and community. And whereas according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 32.5 million small businesses in the United States. Small businesses represent 99.7% of firms with paid employees. Small businesses are responsible for 62% of net new jobs created since 1995, and small businesses employ 46.8% of the employees in the private sector in the United States. And whereas 79% of consumers understand the importance of supporting the small businesses in their community on Small Business Saturday, 70% report the day makes them want to encourage others to shop small, independently owned retailers, and 66% report that the day makes them want to shop small all year long. And whereas 58% of shoppers reported they shopped online with a small business and 54% reported they dined or ordered takeout from a small restaurant, bar, or cafe on Small Business Saturday in 2021. And whereas the City of Rehoboth Beach, along with its partners, the Rehoboth Beach Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce and Rehoboth Beach Main Street, often work independently and collaboratively to support local small businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and help preserve our communities. And whereas advocacy groups and economic development initiatives, as well as public and private organizations across the country, have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore.
I've finished from here. Now, therefore, I, Stan Mills, Mayor of the City of Rehoboth Beach, do hereby proclaim Saturday, November 26, 2022 as Small Business Saturday in the City of Rehoboth Beach, and I urge the residents of and visitors to our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants via in-person and online shopping on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. Proclaimed on the date of the Small Business Saturday, proclaimed 26th of the day of November 2022. Stan Mills, Mayor. Thank you for saving my voice a little bit. And don't forget that is not this Saturday, but next Saturday. Our next item of business is our last item of business. We'll see how quickly this goes. Would like this item is the last item of business. Discuss path forward to implement 2022 City of Rehoboth Beach Comprehensive Development Plan, which is currently awaiting certification by the governor. Coincidentally, or by fortune, the governor certified this this week, and so we are pleased that that took place finally. If you recall that the comprehensive development plan is mandated by state law. Planning Commission is tasked with updates every 10 years. Certain elements within the comprehensive development plan are mandated by state law. Some are optional, some are aspirational. Really, I think it's best that you read it as it really does a good job explaining its purpose, the history of the town, and visions and future action items to keep ourselves a viable town. So best to read it, even though it's about probably 400 or 500 pages. It's worth a good read. Most recently, the update was a 2-year process in front of the Planning Commission, or 2 years plus perhaps. And the Planning Commission handed over the CDP to the mayor and commissioners, and the mayor and commissioners adopted the CDP in June 2022. So after it was adopted in June 22, it was sent to the governor's office. And so even though it was just approved in November, this particular week, the reference to adoption is, I think, within his letter. And so the time clock, if you will, started back in June. The CDP implementation team identified in the comprehensive development plan includes the mayor and commissioners, planning commission chair, the city manager, and the city staff. For this exercise, Lawrence Christian, our new city manager, would have to be reminded that he's not on board till the first week in January. He's fully aware of this and what we're doing. So in the meantime, whenever I reference the city manager, we're going to be talking about interim city manager Evan Miller on this, who, by the way, will not only be working on the CDP, this is Evan Miller, he's also working on the budget, because again, the city manager, we can't stop and wait for him to come here. So in fact, I think the budget's already set in motion. So Lawrence is well aware of that, and we'll follow along. So today's topic focuses on how best to implement the comprehensive development plan. I wanted to read you a note. Again, there's a support document in there. It's got a timeline, but I wanted to read something in here. That with this new 2022 CDP, there's the expectation for better organization and management of implementation protocols, including prioritization of action items ultimately by the Board of Commissioners. In the past, implementation was lacking a methodical approach on how best to tackle any of maybe 100 action items. Of past comprehensive development plan action items in the past, they were acted on primarily at the call of a commissioner willing to step forward and sponsor the topic from initial introduction to hopeful accomplishment of that action item task. So again, it was maybe rather haphazard. I'm seeking a more methodical approach here, and that's what we're talking about today. The layout of the comprehensive development plan, if you're familiar with it, we have various chapters. On chapter 8 is implementation, and chapter 8 goes through implementation program. It's got listed in here chapters 3 through 7, listed in here with their goals that have been identified and adopted, and the action items that have been identified. There's a total of, say, about 88 action items within the CDP, chapters 3 through 7. And some of those action items are already ongoing. By example, action item, evaluate opportunities for dining establishments to expand outdoor dining, including utilization of public space and neighboring spaces. So that would really be crossed off as something that's already ongoing. Another one that's ongoing is add the category of oceanfront commercial buildings to those for which site plan review is required. If you recall, that's already been tasked to the Planning Commission, and they're studying it. So that's an ongoing one. But besides some action items that are ongoing, there's also some action items in here within those 88 that, in my opinion at least, should be the purview of the city manager. So some examples would be that continue to support training programs for utility operators licensing requirements. To me, that's rather than me saying whether that's a priority or not, I would rather task that to the city manager, along with some of the other things. Excuse me. So this layout of the CDP is very important. I will share with you that I talked with Lauren Good many, many months ago. So not long, I guess, after the Planning Commission handed it to her. And I asked her about implementation. And some of her comments were, implementation starts essentially with prioritization of action items. And from there, we would seek funding and management of acting on those action items. Again, that's something that we've never really done before. She further says the main focus on prioritizations by the mayor and commissioners, that if we chose, we could also seek input from the Planning Commission, but suggested we set guidance or parameters. But she did tell us that there was no prescription on how to prioritize anything. There's no guidebook that says, hey, here's what you do first, second, and third, and fourth. So Evan and I put our heads together and wanted to share with you a proposed path forward, and then at the end, seek your feedback on that. The one, where is it? The one support document has a timeline in it. Let's see if we can enlarge it a little bit. This is something that we made up, and a couple pieces come from the CDP, but otherwise we're left to fill the blanks ourselves. Notice the first bullet is November 18th, which is today. We're talking about it and how to prioritize for the upcoming year. Out of this meeting, I'm hoping that we can assign tasks and start prioritizing this and issue a timeline to be able to comply with. By example, on the 18th, out of this meeting, I'm going to suggest that we go back and that the mayor and commissioners identify their top 10 action items from chapters 3 through 7. And then after you've identified your top 10 items within 3 through 7, that you rank each of those 10 items 1 through 10 so that we can have some kind of scoring system. Additionally, I'm going to suggest that while the commissioners are doing that and looking through, you go ahead and identify any action items you think are ongoing, and you identify those action items that you think are the purview of the city manager. In other words, when you identify those you think are ongoing or the purview of the city manager, that withdraws them from those 88 that you're going to be looking at in ranking and prioritizing. So it'll shorten your list by a little bit. At the same time, I would like to task we don't have to, but we could task the Planning Commission with identifying their top 10, specifically though from chapter 4, which is the land use. And then if we want, we could say, you can also give us your priorities from the remainder of the CDP, provided they are within your authority or purview. I don't know how to say it best, but if it's within their authority or something, in other words, the environmental issues and those things, I'm not asking the Planning Commission to rank those or to prioritize those. Focus on the things that are definitely within their purview. So that's a task for the mayor and commissioners, task for the Planning Commission, and then for the city manager. task him with ranking the operational items. If you go back to the early section of Chapter 8, Implementation, there's a whole list of operational action items in there that, to me, are already priorities, every one of them. So all I would like to do is ask the city manager to go in there and rank them so that we can get started on them. And maybe we even say, hey, you've got 1 year to get all those accomplished. And then you come back to us and say that's achievable or it's not. So again, mayor and commissioners identify priorities, they rank them. They also identify ongoing and those action items purview of the city manager. If you like, we task the planning commission with identifying their top 10 from Chapter 4 primarily. And we ask the city manager to rank his operational items and any others. So if we look at our second bullet up there on this timeline, it says December 5th. That was a proposal for the deadlines for submitting the mayor and commissioners' priorities and the city manager's priorities to the city manager and the executive assistant. And I have the same thing, submittal of deadline of December 12th for submitting action items to the city manager from the planning commission. Why they have a little extra time is because their next meeting is December 9th or somewhere in there. So we're giving them one shot to get together, categorize what they think are the top 10 and forward it to the city manager by 3 days after their next meeting that's coming up. With that, the suggestion is that again, this is new and we're going to be flexible with it. Want to get your thoughts too, but wanted to start off with this foundation for discussion. So the next meeting after these are received, all the priorities, they would be compiled and ranked and made presentable to the commissioners by the city manager and executive assistant. And then on December 16th, which is the date of a December 16th regular voting meeting of the commissioners, we would just include in there a discussion topic on the final priorities. And out of that meeting, when we finalize those priorities, then we would pass them on to the city manager for his review and estimation of budgeting needs. You know, we're liable to get, if all 7 of us come up with 10 priorities, there's a potential we could have 35 priorities. I'm hoping that we get some overlap there, you know, considerable overlap. It would be my hope. And then the reason we want to pick them and send them to the city manager is we want to pick our 5 or 10, whatever we want, ask him to estimate the budgeting needs. Why? So that they can come back at the January 9th workshop meeting and we can talk about what the estimate of budgeting needs are. The priorities that we select, who knows what they're going to total? Maybe they total $16 million, $10 million. We're liable to say, whoa, instead of 10 priorities, we're married to the first 5 and we want to change some of the other ones. So again, I think we have to be flexible with some of this stuff and how it works. And then after the January 9th meeting, we give more direction to the city manager and confirm what priorities we want as part of the standard budget process. And then, of course, starting January 20th in the morning, January 20th in the morning before our regular voting meeting would be our budget session number 1. And so I'd like to give you, just while we're talking about the budget, if I can, what our budget sessions are. So if you would put these on your calendar, please. Budget sessions, January 20th, 9 a.m. is budget session number 1. February 6th, 1 p.m. is our budget session 2. February 17th, 9 a.m. is budget number 3. March 6th, 1 p.m., number 4. March 17th, 9 a.m., number 5. April 10th, 1 p.m. is number 6. It may be, last year, how many? We only had 4 budget sessions or 5. So we may not need all 6. Hopefully we don't. But again, with this budget discussions about the CDP, we may want more. This actually reflects the philosophy we did, or the program we did last year for budget sessions. And that is, all of these days coincide with either a workshop meeting or a regular meeting. So it just
one thing to note, Mayor, the budget has to be adopted by April 1st.
by April 1st. Well, why don't we cross off April 10th? That made it easy. Thank you. Okay. I thought we were shooting for the mid-April. You're right. You're right. I want to go over the remainder of this timeline with you real quick, and that is, again, January 20th starts the budget process. I just want a reminder that January to July 1st, prior to July 1st annually, the Planning Commission is tasked with an annual implementation status report. And they have to submit that to the state, and at the same time, of course, they would submit it to us. And then following receipt of that, July to December, probably actually earlier, probably July to September, this team would get back together and discuss the priorities for the following budget year. After that, there's just a note that says in 5 years and 10 years, as mandated by state law, there need to be the additional notes there. Almost done. Can you bring the document camera up there? Tight as you can get. That's good enough. This is something that Evan created with Wallace Montgomery, I guess. This has a list of all the action items from chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now you can go back to chapter 8 if you want, and use that as your guide also, because it includes the goals also. Whereas this worksheet only includes the this sheet here only includes the action items. So you may want to refer back to Chapter 8 implementation, where it has the goals also. But you can see here, we're going to modify this a little more, but it's got the name of the chapter. It's got the individual action items. It's got the priority ranking here. So what I would say that you probably would do would be to go through here and say, that's a priority, that's a priority, that's a priority, that's a priority, and go through the other pages, and then go back and rank these. This is number 1, this is number 2, 3, 4, etc. Something. So that's our intent here. Then we're going to add a column over here that indicates, is this ongoing question mark, and is it the purview of the city manager? So there's also a column for notes, and we can send this to you electronically also, but we can also print it out if you like. So those are some thoughts I will share with you, and I'm going to sit down first. I would like to end with a couple things. Reminder on this timeline that I had up here, that one good news is that 18 months out from adoption, we have to take care of any rezoning ideas, but the good news is there are no rezoning requirements in this CDP, correct? So at that 18-month period, we do not have to do anything. So that is not on the timeline. I will share with you that this proposed program of prioritizing, ranking action items has been discussed with the interim city manager. He contributed, but we've also discussed this with the new city manager, Lawrence Christian, City Solicitor Glenn Mandalis, planners Ray Morovic, Nick Walls, and initially with planner Lauren Good, as I mentioned earlier, with Planning Commission Mike Bryan, who couldn't be here today, and all concur on this proposed program. They think it's pretty good, and Mike Bryan, if we wanted, was willing to take back the request of the Planning Commission to do some ranking, again, if we want. We certainly are capable of reading their minds on some of this stuff, but it may be valued to ask them. So Evan, do you want to give any note, and then we'll go to the feedback and input from the commissioners, please?
Do you want to make any comments, Evan?
No.
Oh, I'm waiting on you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said hearing none.
I'm sorry. Okay, okay. Let's open it up to the commissioners. Anybody have any input, feedback?
I think the timeline is achievable. I would want to hear the priorities from the Planning Commission, so I'd like to see that happen.
Okay, okay.
And the review sheet that Evan's created there, will you send that chapter 4
yes.
to Planning Commission with instructions?
Yeah. I'll converse with Mike and go through him and give them a sheet and instructions based on what we've come up with. Hey, this is a new process. Everybody agrees that priority is the next thing, and Evan has a way that he's going to rank. After you rank them, he's going to do his own ranking among those so that we can try to see what rises to the top.
And once we provide our list of the top 10, then we'll all go through and come up with a top 10 agreeable to everybody.
Exactly.
And then that is subject to the budget review to see if we can fund those actions. And then there's the next element, how we track them as to whether there's a time frame as to how long it's going to be taken to accomplish them, or so that we can have a schedule of feeling of accomplishment, or we missed the goal, or.
Yeah, actually, I guess I either omitted or left something out here. There are some other steps beyond this somewhere in here. In that, yes, we want to monitor everything, but also we might even put a column in there that says assign to or sponsor. You know, if you have something you're very passionate about and you want to sponsor one of those topics, then let us know. Because that's still a good way to get things done and accomplished, is to try to tag or assign them to somebody. And then what were some other things we were thinking about? Assignments, sponsorships, monitoring them over a timeline.
We did have timeline.
So that what can be done first. We got to remember, this is year one of a brand new CDP where we've never ranked anything, we've never done anything. I'm fully confident we are going to get some accomplishment this year. I have no doubt on it. But we also got to remember that there's a year 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5 in there. And we will be reviewing this on an annual basis.
At least for this ranking portion, are we going to be able to do this with a shareable document, like a Google Doc, where we could, you know, update a singular document?
No, I don't.
No, I think
we need to do it independently. But then when he compiles something,
I'm just saying
that would be
you know,
shareable.
If we compiled it all in the same document, you wouldn't require you to.
I'd rather for independence that we be independent. I think.
Okay,
Yeah. And that way we're not swayed. Any further comments?
Yeah.
I think we need to hire some new staff people to help us out here, just to keep the spreadsheet up to date.
Yeah,
And I would hope it's a spreadsheet and not a Word document.
Oh, yeah, no.
Sure.
I'll get that.
Yeah.
All righty. So if there's no further comments, I just want, we'll go on to the next item. Is there anybody out there, public, That means you, Walter. Is there any comment you want to make on the CDP?
Start the meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Commissioner announcements. Does anybody have any commissioner announcements or anything?
I just said one thing I wanted to suggest. I had a contact from a constituent, and they were asking about whether the city was going to be doing anything with regard to early announcement of weather events, and I just wanted to find out it's related to the events that we had last month or 2 months ago, and is that something that we would want to discuss or pass it on to one of the committees or something like that?
I think if you got together with the city manager would be appropriate.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So I'll pass it on to you.
All right. Anybody else? If not, we'll go to a review future meeting dates. Monday, December 5th, 9 a.m. is a workshop meeting. Friday, December 30th. No. Friday, December 16th, 9 a.m. is budget meeting number 1. Is that right?
No, you said January 20th.
December 16th is just a 2 o'clock regular
December 16th is a 2 o'clock regular meeting. All right. I'm stopping there.
Good.
All righty. With that, citizen, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, one other
Yes, sir.
comment. Could we get a 2023 meetings calendar?
Yeah, well,
for us
yeah.
by maybe a workshop in December?
Yep. Walter, you want to finish up, if you would, please? Don't start off with your name and.
Walter Brittingham, 123 Henlopen Avenue. Reluctantly, I bring back up something I said to Evan earlier. I watched Sposato last year when they started the stone garden at the museum. It was done disgustingly. It's trashed. Here we have today, Sposato went out there and dug up the entrance to the city, left the irrigation a mess, broke up the valve boxes and everything else in a deplorable way, left cones on the sidewalks and everything. And there was apparently nobody out there supervising. It's a terrible way that people see coming in the city, and it's dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter.
Just, Mayor,
Yep.
one point on that. So you'll call, that's the canal side garden, so we'll work with Cindy Lovett on that.
In Main Street, yeah. If there's nothing further, I would like to call this meeting adjourned at 5:47 p.m.